If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Martin and Jacob Furdui in the Stokehouse. Thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Dude, thanks for having us, brother.
Thanks so much, Josh.
Yes. So, Jay, you have always been like the smartest guy in the room in the brotherhood. In-house theologian, philosopher, science guy, apologist. You taught a generation of people to defend the faith and to defend it in truth in our college ministry. You are like everything Christian worldview Bible taught guy. You are also an incredible musician, drummer, singer, songwriter, guitar player. Many don't know, but you are so good at poker tournaments. You actually played in the World Poker Tournament multiple times. And I want to add, you're one of the most generous guys I know. You bless a lot of people. Amen. And we got Jay on the podcast, one of my good friends, one of my best friends. And then we got Jacob Furdui. Jake, you are the walking book. You are the library. You have a library of probably, 10,000 books or something. Who even knows? Who's ever counted? Who really knows?
Yeah.
And you have read many of them, most of them. You consume more books than anybody I know. And you have this superpower of being able to pull up quotes and stories from all that you've read. You are the true cowboy. You're wearing cowboy boots right now, not because it's a fashionable, stylish, cultural thing today.
It's part of the uniform.
It's part of the uniform. You are a true cowboy, and you get in the dirt with your boys, but above all, you take great pride in building their character like a true gentleman. You are the deadliest catch deep sea fisherman, a dangerous man who doesn't hesitate to throw powerful ideas into the mix to change the culture. You are an educator and an in-house professor to the brothers. When I think of Jake Furdui, I think of brilliance, grit, and integrity. Many say you were born 1,000 years ago and time traveled to get here to today. Above all, both you brothers fear God. You love your families. You love your wives, and not multiple wives, one wife each. And you both have 5 kids each.
That's right.
And so thank you, Britt and Melissa, for letting the boys come out and play. We're so thankful.
Yeah.
And guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Dude.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We should come on this podcast more often, man. You're making me feel real good about it.
Yeah, I know.
It's the Stokehouse, baby. It's time to get fired up.
I love it.
Yeah. We go way back. Like we traveled together through the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like we lived together there for a month. We saw Israel. We saw Petra. We saw the pyramids together. We went in the Egyptian museum.
Yeah.
We rode donkeys, camels, horses. We rode taxi cabs through Egypt. Almost died.
Yep. That's right.
We got kicked off a bus in the middle of the night in Egypt.
Yeah.
We did.
At gunpoint. That was
amazing
awesome.
story.
We have done a lot of kingdom work together. We have gone into the colleges. We have gone into Mormon temples and or stakes, they call them.
Right,
The
yeah.
churches. I was going to say Mormon churches, but that's not the right word.
Outside the temple.
Yeah, outside the temple. We went to the Mormon fair. We did a bunch of work there.
Yep.
But we have been battling and sharpening each other over the years for probably 20 years now. I've known you guys.
Yeah.
And so it's, of course, a blessing for you to come on the Stokehouse and hang out.
Thank you, brother. It's a blessing to be here, man.
Of course. You guys remember when we first met? You remember the first time we actually met? I love asking this because it's fun for me to reminisce through your experience.
Yeah, I remember meeting you and Jeremy inside of the Harvest Cafe.
Okay.
And I forget the topic that we were talking about, but I just remember you guys being so enthusiastic and so fired up, and just making me feel like I belonged. And it was a good feeling because that was a time in my life where I was searching for a lot of different things.
How old?
I was probably about, I want to say I was about 20, 21 maybe. Yeah, and
You were a rock star?
I was trying to be. I was in a band. We were touring. We were trying to make something of ourselves, but at the same time, I was just so conflicted because I was living in somewhat of a backslidden state. I love the Lord, and I loved the Word of God. I loved I loved to study. In fact, one of the things that really motivated me to study, deeper into my faith was the fact that a couple of the guys in my band, they were raised Jehovah's Witness. So I was constantly inundated by their families with, so why don't you come down to the Kingdom Hall? Why don't you come to the assembly?
Yes.
And then I'm like, I'll come to your assembly, and I will come locked and loaded.
Yep.
So, but that
In a
kind of
figurative
motivated.
sense, yes, with ideas.
Yes. No, don't
Yeah,
get any
with
wrong ideas.
Ideas.
Yes. So that kind of motivated me to really delve deeper into my faith. But at the same time too, these guys, these Jehovah's Witness guys, guys that I love, and I mean, I don't really keep in touch with one of them, but another one of them I still do keep in touch with. He's a great guy, and but even them at that point in their life, they started to kind of go off the rails because they had been raised in such a strict environment, and they had never really gotten a taste of the world, and so they went crazy.
And this is a full punk rock band.
Yeah,
And Jay, you guys were a tight three-piece.
we were
Really tight.
We were.
Like great musicianship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we expanded the band as time went on. We added some other members, but in the midst of that, they just kind of went buck wild, and once they got a taste of the world, they went crazy.
Right.
And I had already kind of gone down that road, and then I had I'd found the Lord when I lived with my dad for a number of years, and I'd found the Lord. That's a story for another time. But
How'd you find Harvest?
yeah, it was it was a Harvest bookstore.
Really?
It was outside on Arlington when it was separate.
Oh,
from the church.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I would just go in there and read. That was what I
Wow.
would do in my spare time.
Interesting.
I would go in there and read, and just pick up different books and hang out in there, and so
And we stumbled in there and just started talking.
well, it was in the newer one.
Okay.
Is when we connected.
Got it. I see.
Yeah, but anyhow, so I was living in that backslidden state and kind of conflicted, and started to get involved a little over at Harvest, and I was pulled back and forth. But yeah, I remember the night very clearly that I decided I was going to quit my band and walk away from it all. And that was a rough night, but I remember coming to Harvest, and it was, I believe, at the end of the Sunday night. And I
remember that night.
I remember coming to you and to Jason Phillips and telling you guys, I quit my band. I'm done. I'm sold out for the Lord. And I remember being encouraged and blessed. And then I didn't look back.
That's great. Was the high school ministry happening at that point? We had not done the well yet?
Just the high school ministry.
Got it.
Yeah, just the
wild,
high school
man.
ministry.
Yeah. Street witnessing, all that stuff took off, and then all the training and the Friday nights, Saturday nights. Yeah. Monday nights. Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. And Jake, you remember way back?
Yeah, way back. I actually met you through Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, it was a Sunday night. We went to, what was it, Islands. We got some burgers, and I remember.
No way.
Yeah, it was a Sunday evening. Jason's always been a great guy, best friend, and
How did you guys meet?
through Jason Phillips.
No way.
Yeah.
You know Jason Phillips?
Yeah,
You knew him first.
Yeah. So through high school, I knew Jason Phillips.
What?
Yeah. He played football with my brother, and
Crazy.
yep. So yeah, he kind of lassoed
Wait,
me.
who
into-
played football?
Ben did.
He did?
Yeah.
I didn't know Ben played football.
Yeah.
What position, you know?
4 years. I don't recall.
Oh, man.
So
Ben,
yep.
you've never told me, and I'm upset.
Yeah, he should have been in here rocking his Letterman's jacket. Or
Yes. So Jason Phillips, if you didn't know, he's a running back.
Okay.
And he was a sprinter.
Yeah.
And the guy's just ripped. I mean, this is his thing. And then he's also
Yo, dude, Popeye's forearms.
yes,
That's what we call him.
Yeah. And then he's a very, very unique man.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
How do you describe him, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think unique is probably the best way to put it.
Jason Phillips, we love you, man. If
Yeah.
you're listening.
Love you, miss you,
A
man.
defender of truth, an absolute goofball at the highest level,
Yeah.
and has his own tips and tricks for all of life.
Yeah, that's
And just
right.
being funny and roping in the guys, and just having fun, and just like knows it. But
Yeah.
then, like when it comes to Jesus and the truth, it's just like
Yep.
we're dead serious.
Yeah, apologetics machine. Dude.
Yes.
No
Yeah,
joke.
one of the all-time greats for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so Hall of Famer at
Yep.
Harvest and
Yeah.
all that time. So you met Jason Phillips and he
Yeah.
introduced you to Jay.
Yeah, he lasted me into attending Harvest. You know, I was a prodigal for a while, and he's like, "Come to church, get off your butt, come to church." So I did, and I
Wow.
met the brothers, and yep, that's how I met you. Yeah, and just man, so blessed.
Did I have hair back then?
You did long hair.
praise God.
It was beautiful mane, man, beautiful.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that. Who can grow an amazing beard himself? I appreciate that.
Yeah, you got it, dude. I was
So how old were you around then? You
I
remember?
was about 23.
Okay.
About, yeah.
Got it. Was the well started yet, or were you still doing high school ministry
The
stuff?
well wasn't started yet. I remember, where was it? It was above that restaurant is when you started the well, right? Mm-hmm. Off Arlington and Indiana. Is that it?
Above, you mean
Yeah, kind of on the island there.
yes, you're talking about the
I think he's talking about the coffee shop that was across from
That's what it was.
Yes,
Yeah, it was a coffee
yes,
shop.
Yes.
Arlington and Magnolia.
So this is
love that
That's
place.
right.
Yeah, that was
Sorry.
cool.
Yeah, no, yeah. Indiana and Van Buren was one.
Yeah.
That's what I think. What you're referencing is we had a Bible study in the coffee shop, and we moved to a couple coffee shops.
Yeah.
that was Coffee Depot. That was firing and happening there.
Yep.
And this is a Bible study taking place in a public coffee shop on Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. A bunch of kids will show up. Everybody buy coffee. We do Bible study and worship in there.
It was glorious, dude. It was awesome. Loved it. Yep.
And people would just come in and, connect with the Lord. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I loved all the different guys coming through there, man.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And then, so we started running together way back when,
Yep.
and the brotherhood kind of started then.
Yeah.
And before you know it, we're having deep experiences with the Lord, where
Yeah.
our eyes are being open, scales are falling off.
Yeah.
The Word of God is sharpening us and challenging us.
Yeah.
We are challenging the world around us.
Yeah.
We start getting after it.
Yeah. SWAT team, students with the testimony.
Yes.
You know, all of that. That was
Street witnessing on the streets.
Yep.
It's crazy, man.
the forum. That was amazing.
The forum?
Yeah, I love that, dude. Yep.
Yes. I would have Jay and Jake on the forum panel, and we go into UCR, we go into RCC,
Yep.
and we would set up a table, an easy up. We'd have kids hold signs. Say, do you believe in God? What do you think about Jesus Christ? We had all these different questions
Yeah.
that the guys had figured out before.
Yep.
We had 2 microphones in the middle of the campus, and actually we had 3 microphones, one for the panel, one for me, one for the people asking questions.
Yeah.
I kind of moderate and try to keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
And these are crazy times, man.
Yeah.
We basically would say, hey, come up, ask any question you want regarding God, Christianity, the Bible. Let's talk.
Yeah. We had that big banner, ask a Christian anything. Yep. Yeah. Loved it, man.
And it opened up conversations. 100 kids would gather, and we get people who were genuinely interested. People were super angry.
Yeah. Professors, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And we kind of had one person for who would kind of cover different topics or categories.
Yeah.
Jake's our historian. Jay's kind of our science, again, in-house theologian, kind of like philosopher, kind of work all angles there. We had
Yep,
a couple
exactly.
different guys on the panel who could dialogue and talk to these kids or
Yeah.
professors about anything. I was just, they ask a hard question and I would just be like, Jay, what do you think? And, wasn't that a crazy time?
It was, man. It was awesome. I mean, I have a lot of good memories from that, but just the way that it helped to grow our faith as we were doing these things together, sharpening one another, getting out there, getting our reps, and just encouraging other people to do likewise. It was truly an amazing, unique time. And it's hard to find that even now, even to see that happening elsewhere. It just makes me feel very grateful because it was a very special thing that I think the Lord did in that group of people in that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any words maybe to some young people listening who would love to see that happen again? What do you think they need to do?
I think they just need to just do it, just be active. Half of the battle is just getting out there and starting something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, we ended up hosting a debate back in the day at UCR.
Crazy, man.
We had a creation evolution debate, and
What was it?
It was, well, say what you will about him now. There's been some kind of a bit of a checkered past with him since, but it was Kent Hovind, and at the time he was one of the leading voices in the creation movement.
Dr. Dino.
Yeah, Dr. Dino. He was a very very skilled debater and very knowledgeable guy, in that field. And, he was willing to debate anybody. That was his MO.
Yeah.
I'll debate anybody, anywhere, anytime. Don't care who they are. I'll debate 3 people at once. Right. And he was very entertaining and very, very skilled at what he did. So, and we found a PhD candidate professor over at UCR. His name escapes me at the time. But he was willing to do it. And he's a guy that we literally met while we were out on the street witnessing, as we would go to, the UCR campus. We would sit out at the coffee shop out there in the University Village. We'd talk to people, and he was a guy that came along and really started pressing into us. And I think that he was a little taken aback by, our willingness to engage, and then the fact that he was a professor, he was somebody with credentials and authority, and we were just kids.
Right.
And, so we said, well, hey, we have a guy that will be willing to debate you. In fact, he'll debate anybody. And he's like, where is this guy?
Any place, anywhere, anytime.
And I'm like, but just be forewarned what you're getting yourself into, right? So we got him to agree to a debate, and he watched Kent Hovind's seminars and stuff, or some of his debates. He's like, oh yeah, I'll debate this guy. So that was cool to hear. But we ended up setting this debate up.
Yeah.
We had no clue what we were doing. We were just figuring it out as we went. And, we ended up, I think it was about 3,000 people that were crammed into this little auditorium.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
And there were so many people that the police had to show up and start turning them away.
That's right.
Lines out the door.
Yeah, there was a line of cars down the street. There was people coming from different states to watch this debate. And we're like, what did we do?
What happened?
How did we do this?
This happened.
And I'm moderating it, and I have no clue what I'm doing. No clue at all. I'm just I'm just faking it till I make it. I'm just watching other debates and going, well, this is what the moderators do in those. And, I'm just this young, silly kid, standing there trying to moderate this debate between these guys.
Yep.
And, it was incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah, God kept showing up in those ways, man. It was like we just put ourselves out there and just said, I don't remember what the saying is. It's like we're like too dumb, like too foolish, like to realize what we're actually doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're so dumb and so foolish that we actually do it, and then God shows up.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And like thousands of people showing up at UCR campus for a debate, and that kind of starts to set a precedent for what's about to happen over the next 5-10 years, right?
Yeah.
That launches, it rallies more kids. We get more passionate, more direct about doing all of this.
Yeah.
And we got real aggressive in defending the faith and standing up for truth.
Yep.
And that's kind of a stamp on our lives,
Right.
from that moment.
Yeah.
It was a powerful time, a special time. And I think to anybody listening that's young, maybe you're 18, 19, 20, I dare you just to go to the movie theater, go to the mall, go to the restaurants, and just start conversations with people. How do you do that? Just do simple things like, hey, do you guys go to church? No, I'm an atheist. Oh, really? Why are you an atheist?
Right.
And you just can dive right. Oh, I'm an agnostic. Okay. Oh, I'm Mormon. Oh, really? Mormon? What do you believe? And you're going to start that conversation. And I think you had said it earlier, Jay. It's like you were challenged by your band members' parents,
Right.
and that's the challenging is what forces you to start studying.
Yeah.
As people challenge you, and you feel dumb, like you don't know anything about what you believe.
Yeah.
And that causes you to dig deeper. What put that in you, Jake? Like, do you remember where that stirring came from? Was there a single moment, or is it like, what started that stirring in you to want to like find the truth, know the truth, and defend it?
Yeah. Man, I'd have to go way back.
Yeah.
I've thought about it, and my brother's probably told you some of my dad's story.
Yeah.
And
I'd love to hear more though.
yeah, just brief recap, like my family's, they're from a Eastern Bloc, former communist country, and Romania. My grandfather was a pastor in the underground church, and they weren't allowed to have Christian literature. Bibles were limited, so there were books on the black market like Pilgrim's Progress. So I remember hearing about my grandfather receiving Pilgrim's Progress, and then hand copying it, and then passing along the original edition of Pilgrim's Progress to the rest of the churches in the Underground Network. So
It's John Bunyan, right?
yeah, and then he had to hide it under the haystack in the barn, in case the secret police tried to look for it. So there's always been that desire, like, hey, if
Your dad told you these stories?
yeah. So, and I knew about him, when he escaped at the risk of his life, going to Austria and then working for a Christian publishing house that would smuggle Christian literature back in the Eastern Bloc. And so that stirred a fire in me to whatever somebody didn't want me reading, I wanted to read it. Whatever the authorities didn't want me reading, you're going to guarantee I'm going to get my hands on it and I want to read about it. So ever
He
since
has all the secret books. We can't even tell you what they are, but he has all of them.
Yes. So I nerd out on that topic, so don't want to go on too many tangents, but yeah, I amassed a huge library and I just wanted to consume. And yeah, I love reading, love learning. So
Did you ever get to spend time with your grandpa?
I did. Yeah. Absolutely loved him. He was a jolly guy, always cracking jokes, smile on his face. He really had the joy of the Lord. Hard-working man, too. Yep.
And he impacted your dad greatly.
He did. Yeah, my grandfather was a prayer warrior. Yeah, and my dad is, too. Yeah, every Friday for the last 20-some years, he wouldn't want me repeating this, but he doesn't eat. He just fasts and prays,
Wow.
So, yeah, 20-plus years. So
Incredible.
Yeah.
And your dad is a hardworking man. He's been running a business for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And he's blesses a lot of family with great work and great vehicles.
Yeah.
He's blessed people at our church.
Yeah.
And again, Christ shines through his business, through his life, through his character, through his family.
Yeah.
And I was just telling Jake before the show, I'm like, dude, I mean, 4 boys, all who worship the Lord.
Yeah.
All who love their wife, all who love their kids, all who work hard.
Yep.
What more can you ask for?
I know, man.
God, give me this blessing.
Yeah, that's what I want. I don't want to bring shame to his name. I want to, honor him as best I can. I want to find ways to honor him, So, yeah, he'd give you the shirt off his back. So there's a Tennyson poem about the honest blacksmith, and I always kind of thought about my dad that way. So, yeah.
How does it go?
I can't rattle off any lines from it.
What is the picture of it?
Oh, just huge bruised hands, hitting the anvil, happy to see his little ones in church next to him every Sunday. And that's been my dad, faithful, going to church every Sunday, active member of his church. Yep. Prayer warrior. He gives back to the community, everything. He's there for the body. So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, the Furdui name goes out, through obviously the brotherhood, but also through the church, and the name is powerful. Yeah. So powerful, I tried to force myself into your family.
You're a member of the family.
And make you guys adopt me as a Furdui. I'm an honorary Furdui.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
that's not conferred on just anyone.
Thank you, Jake. But so this started the burning of truth within you, from a young age, and this desire for books and appetite for reading.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when you and Jay collided, because again, you complete me. There's this.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, man. It's like where Jake begins and ends. Jason Martin begins, and it ends. Like there's this beautiful brotherhood there that connects, and obviously is something that I've taken advantage of greatly, because I'm so thankful for the wealth of knowledge and brain activity that I don't have.
Yeah.
And so while I can maybe rally the kids to come together, and listen, you guys stand up and start training and sharpening them. And that was the beauty of it all.
Yeah. Together we make a considerable man. That's a line from Ben-Hur.
What's funny, just to kind of go back to your dad for a minute, the first interaction I had with your dad,
Oh man.
I'll never forget it, because I made a fool of myself. But I had never met his dad, and I didn't know that his dad had a very strong accent, right? And this is when I had first gotten to know the Furduis, and we'd become close, but I hadn't been over to their house or met their folks or anything like that. And I mean, the guys, we jab at each other sometimes. We call each other names, and all in good fun. And I had called the house for Jake, and somebody picked up the phone with a very strong accent, and I thought that it was one of his brothers.
Yeah.
Playing a
trick on you?
Yeah, playing a trick on me. And hey, is Jake there? No, he's not here. And I'm just like, oh, come on, man, just stop messing with me. Give Jake the phone. And he kept saying, no, he's not here. But he was saying it in a very strong accent.
Right.
And then I called him a name that I won't repeat. Oh, come on, dude. And then he paused, and there was quiet, and he's like, what did you say, you punk? And I'm like, oh no, like, this is very bad.
Yeah.
And then I tried to play it off like, oh, I'm sorry, I just didn't understand you. I'll call back for him later. Thank you, bye.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll never forget that story. And he doesn't forget it either. He gives me a hard time about it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, those are fun days, fun times. We were ragtag renegades, man, running around. Jay, we played a lot of music together.
Yeah.
We got to jam a lot in a lot of different house parties.
Yep.
We got to jam a lot on stage, obviously. Worship together. Where did all this music begin in you?
It's a good question. Like my family doesn't have a very musical background. My older brother, is world class.
Right. Pianist, right?
Yeah, incredible.
And DJ.
And he's a DJ.
Yeah.
So, he was always playing music when I was younger. And he picked it up himself. He was self-taught, incredible.
Wow.
And he would have other instruments kind of lying around. So, I'd pick those up and mess with them. And, eventually we were just doing things, in a self-taught way, And
you not only picked it up, Jay, that's a play on words there. You picked up a regular guitar and turned it upside down and started playing Jimi Hendrix style.
Yeah, well, I mean, people call it Jimi Hendrix style because he played upside down. But I didn't do that intentionally. I did that by accident because, once again, had no clue what I was doing. So, I'm right-handed, but it just felt natural to play left-handed. So I picked up a right-handed guitar, having no clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I downloaded some tablatures from the internet.
Yeah.
And I was looking at tabs, and when you're looking at a tab, like, it doesn't specify what's the right way to hold a guitar. I'm just looking at the tab, and it's telling me where to put my fingers.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that, and then I learn all of the chords. And I learn a couple songs on my own, and then
on upside down guitar,
playing a right-handed guitar, left-handed.
Yeah.
Right. And so with it strong right-handed, and so then I'm doing that, and then there's some people, I don't recall the first time it was brought to my attention, but they look at me and they go, "What are you doing that thing?
Yeah.
Like, you're playing that upside down." I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, So, and then they explain that to me, and I'm like, whoa, well. I mean, I already learned all the chords this way. It feels comfortable. I tried to play it right-handed, could not do it.
Wow.
And I just kept it going, and, and I still play it upside down to this day.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And but drums became your first instrument.
Yeah, I was a drummer first. Some neighbors, they had some drums, so I'd go and I'd bang on those drums, and we had some at the house eventually, and I just kind of picked it up as I went, and it became a passion of mine. Mm-hmm. So it became something that.
How old were you when you started playing?
Probably about I'd say about 11 or 12.
Huh.
Yeah, and got more serious about it when I was 15 or 16, and then that's when I started trying to form bands and do those types of things. And
you sing from the drums?
I did sing from the drums in my original band.
Yep.
I did, yeah.
Harmonies, ripping harmonies.
Yeah, I would sing even lead sometimes on
Yep.
some of the songs, but not something that I continued to do because it was really difficult and just kind of wanted to play the drums.
Right.
Yeah.
And that launched into some great worship. We found out you were a drummer, stepped in
Yeah.
the worship team, and man, we had some crazy worship nights.
We did, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, mostly doing it at the well, and then at the well camp, and
Yep.
having just some great memories there.
We did a Sunday night worship night as well one time. We had the stage, a couple thousand people there. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and some of my greatest memories of worship nights were when we did war at the well. War was when we would go and we would pray all night. From
11 p.m.
from like sundown to sunrise.
Yep.
And we would have worship in between prayer intervals, and
Wow.
we would bring the worship, and it would be some of it would be very 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 toned down, very solemn worship, and then we would celebrate at the
Yeah.
end, and we would just bring
Yeah.
it, and it was just such a great time.
Yeah, bringing kids into full adoration
Yeah.
of the Lord. And it was powerful because it's great when the musicianship is so high that you don't have to think about playing anymore, and you can just worship at the highest level. And
Yeah.
you're just worshiping God, and you get to really focus more on commanding and challenging and calling the kids or the crowd to worship God.
Yeah.
It like just sounding the horn, like it is time to worship. And these were powerful moments. WAR stood for Waging a Revolution, WAR, and we were doing it in prayer. We're going to go to war in prayer. And we have 200 or 300 kids show up on a Friday night, and we would pray all night until Saturday morning.
Wow.
We did this, I don't know how many times, but man, it was powerful.
It was.
I love it.
Some those moments of time, they almost like stand still. Like it's almost like you're in another dimension or something, because I don't remember ever thinking about what I have to do the next day. I don't, and like in those moments, you're so lost, in, again, connecting and focusing on the Creator and blessing God and reflecting on your own life. I mean, there's all kinds of emotions and ideas that are coming through your mind, from repentance, conviction, encouragement, being reinforced through the worship. It was such a powerful time. And I really loved it. I miss those days.
Yeah,
me
I
too,
do too,
man.
man.
Miss those days. Now we're all grown up. We are, we're old.
Getting there.
No.
Yep.
Jake, I'm intrigued to know where the fascination for books came from, or when you actually discovered that you had a fascination for books, and when you started to accumulate books. Because again, you said that that hunger for truth came, that desire came through your family not being able to have those books. You're like, I'm going to get my hands on whatever I can.
Yeah.
But was there a moment in time, was this junior high or high school, like when you started to accumulate? When did this moment happen? You're like, oh my gosh, I love books.
Yeah.
And then second, do you remember like an epiphany moment where the lights clicked on and you realized you loved literature, you loved history?
Yeah.
Because that never clicked on for me. I don't know what happened. I mean, obviously I love a lot of it, but not in the same way and passion that you do. Like, do you remember the moment you discovered that?
I don't think it was one moment. It was probably several. There's a few that I can think of. Like, in our house, we didn't have regular television, so we'd have like the channels that screened old movies, black and whites and stuff. And I remember watching these old movies, like with C. Aubrey Smith, that's a old British actor, and some of the movies he'd be in, and he'd be all polished, and he'd be quoting books and things. And my brother was like, "Yeah, that guy had a classical education," and I was like, "What is that?" And then I started to do some digging. I found old books, and I grew up in a small town, Ukaipa, and they'd have yard sales, and there'd be old books, these yard sales, because it was a lot of old folks there. And I would buy these books, and I would just read them. And and I just wanted to give myself a great books education. And then remember another time I was homesick and I was in middle school, and somebody had given my dad some literature that was sitting on his counter, and I was sick, and I'm just going to read this. I remember just being fascinated by what was in there. It was all political stuff, theological, political, and so I was just like, I want to learn more about this. So I looked in the bibliography, and every book that they cited, I went out and hunted for and bought. And then there would be an author I just really loved, and I would read everything in the canon of that author, and then I would try to buy every book that he was citing. And I just wanted to be able to articulate the same things they were articulating. And because I was really interested in the way Christians have stood up to tyrants and things like that, over the centuries. And it was just something I just wanted to really wrap my mind around, really understand. So I did a deep dive into communism and the Bolshevik Revolution and church history and
this
things.
This in high school?
Yeah, high school and early 20s, things like that. So really got into Solzhenitsyn, tried to read everything by him, and then Yevgeny Zamotayin and so many others. Everything by Wormbrand. Of course, he was a contemporary with my grandfather in communist Romania. So don't know if you ever read Tortured for Christ. There's a there's a movie too. And so I just really wanted to understand that. So because I can see the warning signs on the wall, in our own country, what was going on. And there was a lot of Christian Americans, conservatives, who were sounding the alarm for a very long time about the inroads that tyranny was making in this country. So,
You were able to identify that even way back when.
Yeah, I could see what was happening. There was ominous parallels. They were just there, and I wanted to do my best to try to head it off if I could. So I was very sensitive to those things. Very so.
Was there ever a moment when the lights turned on that you're like, oh my gosh, I can read and enjoy reading more than anyone else around me?
Yeah. So, I loved the written word. I would read Solomon, and I was just intrigued by wisdom.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna say this in the same sentence. Solomon and Adam Cartwright from Bonanza. Like he was the wise older brother, and he always had his nose in a book. And so I wanted to be like that guy, and so I would read Solomon, just read Proverbs all the time, and just wisdom literature. And then I started to branch out and read wisdom literature, and I really got into books that were written for kings and princes. So like there's a whole genre of literature called A Mirror for Princes. So if there were books that kings had that they gave to their sons, I wanted to read that. I wanted to treat myself as if I had that type of education, just ingest the best. So I tried to do that. So I would hunt these books down. This is before the days of the internet,
the
really.
Book hunter.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's a name for it, a book snake. And I found so many gems over the years, man. Dusty used bookstores, antique shops, just finding incredible stuff. Incredible. So
while some can't wait to burn up their money on a good meal and or their favorite latest toy, you are running to the bookstore, nickel and diming these dudes out of books.
Man, you have no idea. Yeah. In the Bible it says, buy wisdom and don't sell it. And to me, I was like, that's books. That's books, And so like I didn't buy them to resell them. I bought them to consume them, And so my books are not supposed to be like museum pieces, that you put on kid gloves and that's how you handle them. I tear them apart. I write in the margins. I dog-ear the pages. I abuse them, But I look at them as weapons. So,
Wow, no, that's amazing. Yeah, we must. Hopefully, this is prophetic. We must. Before we are old, build a Jacob Furdui library. And Jay,
I agree.
We got to make this thing happen. We got to put all these books on beautiful shelves.
Yep.
They'll be available for the kids and the next generation to be able to go in. It will have a vault on the doors. Bank vault is the door, so that you can only get in with a special code. And because all the weapons are in the library.
Yep, absolutely.
Kids need.
Yep.
Jake, but you are an anomaly to one sense because while again, you're in your when I listen to your mind and when I listen to you speak, you should be in a 5-piece suit with a handkerchief.
Yeah.
Right? But you are you're cowboy boots, Wrangler jeans, and a beard and a cowboy hat is generally where you'll find Jake. Not that he can't clean up; he can clean up real nice. He can get sharp if he needs to, but generally this is. I mean, it's beautiful, man. It's like the dude on the construction site, like swinging a hammer. Literally is the smartest guy in the city, and you don't even know it sitting there. I mean, it's like I love it. I love everything about it. It breaks all whatever it is, all parameters.
Yeah. No, that's what I want my boys to be. I want them to be manly, and I want to model that for them, So I wanted to find the right books for them. So I've been building their library since before I had kids. My wife and I, she was my girlfriend for a long time, and we would go to homeschool conventions, and I'd spend a lot of money on books.
Yeah.
And so, I knew this stuff's not going to be available someday.
Wow.
So I wanted to have the foresight, to build that library for them.
Incredible.
And I don't want them to be delicate doilies.
Yeah.
I want them to if they're going to be a snob about anything, it's about what they read.
Wow.
So cigars, coffee, whiskey,
Right.
Persian rugs, whatever. But books. Be a snob about books.
That's good.
Garbage in, garbage out. So what you consume. So that's always kind of been my working philosophy with that.
No, it's awesome.
So,
Jay, what was your first ideas of Jake Furdui when you met this guy? Do you remember that, or you know what I mean? Like when I met Jake, I remember being fascinated by this guy because there isn't a lot of humans like him.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the Furdui brothers were very
unique
in their own way.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I actually met Ben first, and Ben and I became friends.
Huh.
And I knew about his brothers, and I'd see them around, and I just always remember the Studley Romanian guys, driving a different car every week. Their dad owned a body shop.
Yeah.
They're always driving these different cars. I'm like, who are these guys? What do these guys do?
Right.
But just getting to know them, because we'd all hang out. After church, and back in those days when we were single and we could hang out till all hours of the night, and chat about this stuff. I got to know Jake hanging out with Ben and with Jason Phillips, and these topics would come up. And one of the great things about Jason Phillips is he was a great facilitator, right? He would facilitate amazing conversations. And what was good about him is he would bring it out in people, and then he would start these conversations. He would bring out these topics, and then with a guy like Jake, he's got a wealth of knowledge. He's literally Goodwill Hunting. He's a walking library, right? So, you bring up a topic, and then Jake can literally just rattle it off like an entire novel, right? And you just listen to Jake, and you hear this stuff, and it fires you up because you're, who is this guy, and who thinks like him, and who says these things, So that's what, really got me, intrigued with building a friendship with Jake. And, that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah. And the same vice versa with Jay, huh, Jake? It's like Jason Martin, another anomaly, punk rock star meet genius, that
hardly.
Well, no, but it's you kind of became the source, Bible answer man, questions and everything, God, Christianity, the Bible, Christian worldview, I don't know. Do you remember that? You remember discovering that in Jay?
I do. Solid brother, dude. We connected right away.
Yeah.
First moment I met him, we became instant best friends. So he is an anomaly. I mean, everything he touches turns to gold, dude. He's got that Midas touch.
He does.
Crazy businessman. He jams on the guitar. You hear this guy sing along with Brittany, and you're just like,
Yeah.
Jaw to the ground. You just can't believe it. Yep.
That's what I mean. I love you guys for so many reasons, but it's just like also different. Like I always used to joke about this because it's like if we were all left to our own worlds, we would never run together, right?
No.
We would have never met each other except for Christ.
Yep.
And Christ brought us together. The church brought us together.
Yeah.
And then like you look at all the unique brothers. And it's like we would never run together. Like we would never know each other. We all be in our own worlds doing our own thing. But because of Jesus, we've all been brought together. That's the beauty of the church. And now we have these tools, man. We got like incredible giftings from so many different angles, and we come together. Yeah, it's it's like the X-Men or something. Like we're on another level, like with superpowers from different angles, and we come together and fight. Yeah. We could take over a city if we need to, which we're currently trying to do. Yeah. What is our plan today, guys? To plan to take over the world, right? Right? We're trying to, for Christ, trying to figure out ways to impact culture on a really high level. Yeah. We lived in the Middle East together. Yeah.
We did.
How did this happen? I mean, I know I went before you guys, but I remember Jay, I don't know if you called me or texted me or like, dude, we're coming.
Yeah. Well, I remember you going and desperately wanting to go.
Yes.
And, and then at that point, a grandparent of mine unfortunately had passed away, but he had left a large inheritance to my mom. And my mom was very gracious and gave a considerable amount of that to my brother and I. So I had all this cash, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to Israel.
Yes.
That's the first thing I thought. I'm going to Israel. And
for a month.
Yeah, for a month. Yep. Yeah. And
so can I interject here?
Sure. Yeah.
So Jason calls me up, and he's like, hey, Josh was discipled in the desert, and he's got to do his pilgrimage in Israel, So, I'm like, oh, man, I'd sure love to be there. He's like, well, I'm going. He's like, and so are you. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. I can't, I'm working summer in construction. I can't afford that, dude. And not with what I'm making. He's like, well, I already bought your ticket. You're going. So
yes, Jay.
Yeah, the brother blessed me, man.
Wow,
so,
praise God.
Paid my way. All the way through there.
Incredible, so, Jake.
Yep.
Yeah. So and I should add that Jake paid me back every penny.
Wow. Wow.
In work, he paid me back. But even though he didn't have to, but he did. So.
Yeah. You guys got on a plane, and you came. I'd been there for 2 months already, and you came and stayed for a month. Yeah. We had traveled the Middle East. We had done Israel once or twice already, from top to bottom. I was running around with my buddies. Yeah. And then we went to Jordan. But we hadn't gone to Egypt yet. You guys show up in town. Yeah. I don't even know, where were we staying at the time? We were at Nancy Hook's house. Were we at in Jerusalem?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where you and Nolan and Christian. Were over at her house, and that's when we first met her. But I think at that point,
hostel.
Yeah, we went to a Jerusalem hostel, like right there off of Ben Yehuda.
Yeah, oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, the Jerusalem hostel. Yeah. Yep. Oh my gosh, I remember that. Okay, and so Ben Yehuda and Zion Square right there. Right. And the nice little shawarma place right there. Yeah. Those sweet little beautiful shawarma burritos.
Oh man,
what was
so
it
good.
Called? It was called was it called Nico's?
Nico's?
Yeah, something
I like
that.
it.
Oh god, I want to remember that name because I think we used to shout it. We were like so excited to go to eat there. The falafel and the shawarma there was fantastic. The pita, and they put the hummus on there, and then they put the cucumbers and the tomatoes, and then they put the meat in there, and it's like this burrito like pita.
Yeah, it's like the Chipotle of Jerusalem, but incredibly good and fresh. Yeah, so good. Yeah.
And the Zion Square there is almost like a 3rd Street promenade in Santa Monica. It's almost the same because the stores line the streets there. And we would go. Remember, we had lots of good conversation on the streets there.
Tons.
We did.
With the rabbis, we'd stop people in the streets. Yeah. Remember the rabbis smoking cigarettes behind the store?
Yeah, I remember.
Who are these guys? Yeah. I thought you're holy, Yes. Yeah. He's like, I am. Oh man, it was so good. So we did Jerusalem first, right?
Yeah.
And went to the old city. Did we go on the Temple Mount? Did we get on there?
We did get up on top.
we
of
did.
We got on the Temple
finally,
Mount,
we did.
Dome of the Rock, and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
And then we probably traveled to the north,
Yep.
up there to the Galilee.
Yeah, we camped out on the Sea of Galilee.
Camped on the Sea of Galilee.
There was a
Yep.
violent storm. Remember that?
Yes.
Yep.
It was incredible. Yeah. In fact, the beach was supposed to be very close to where Jesus cast the demons into the swine, and they went into the sea.
That's right. That's right.
Very near that area.
We stayed near. It's a place called Kersey, and you can still see the catacombs or the tombs there in the rock. You can see the holes in the caves.
Yeah.
And Jesus cast a demon out of the man, and they go into the legion, and the demons go into the pigs, and then they run down the slope into the Sea of Galilee, and we could see it right there. We could actually see the slope of where they would probably those pigs would have ran and drowned themselves there in the Galilee.
Right.
And we off-roaded our little car.
Little rental car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
What was that thing? Like a Yaris or something? It was like a little Toyota Yaris or something?
Yeah, it's a tin can, whatever it was.
I forget. Wasn't the name of the rental car company like Eldon Rock or something like that? Yeah, I remember that.
That's right, Jay.
Yeah.
And we off-roaded this thing, and I think we were bottoming out like in the sand, like trying to get to the shore.
Yeah.
And then we set up the car, and did we do a little bonfire or something?
We did. In fact, we weren't even supposed to be on that beach. They told us that we couldn't camp there, but we did it anyway. And we dug a hole in the sand, and we made a fire. And we were freezing, and it was actually extremely uncomfortable and terrible. But but we did it anyway. And it was awesome.
We were all packed in like sardines.
Yeah.
I was hoping to get in between two dudes. Instead, I got the end, so I was the wind barrier.
No.
Yeah.
It was freezing that night, and the wind came. The wind comes on the Sea of Galilee. You could see the storms that would show up.
Yeah.
This is the same water that Jesus walked on.
Yeah.
This is the same water that Jesus was cooking breakfast for the disciples after the resurrection.
Yeah.
And Peter sees and hears the Lord call to him. Remember, he throws off his outer robe and is naked or in his undergarments, jumps into the water, swims to Jesus when he hears his voice.
Yeah.
And the Lord is cooking fish there on the shore.
Yeah.
And we got to experience that. That was crazy.
Yes.
Super fun. Then we went down to south. We went to Elat, I think. Did we see the tabernacle, full-size tabernacle?
Yes, we did. And before we went there, we were at Masada.
Masada, yes.
We climbed up
Yeah.
Masada. We decided to do it.
Yes.
You can take a nice, cush little, what is it?
Trolley or something, yeah.
We're like, no, we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And of course, like we all had to push each other. And it's
Yes.
like, if one guy says no, then it's like,
Yeah.
then you feel like you're a wuss.
Yeah.
So, you got to do it. And
It's called Snakehead Trail or something like
Yeah.
that because it zigzags up like a snake.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's a steep climb, and it's a rough walk. But we climbed to the top of Masada. Masada was a place where I don't know, maybe history guys could give me a little reference.
You want to take that one, Jake?
Yeah. Well, it was after the fall of Jerusalem. Many of the Israelites camped out up there, and they held out against the Romans. And the Romans actually built a siege ramp. I think it took 3 years to complete.
Yes.
And then they
And the siege ramp was basically them taking these wheelbarrow type things or buckets and
just
dumping dirt, right?
dirt, gravel, boulders,
And building a hill or a mountain up to the top of this plateau on the top where they were hiding.
Yeah, and then they cast lots to they had a suicide pact. They cast lots to see who would finish everybody off.
The Jews did it.
Yeah.
They killed off everyone before the Romans finished the siege ramp and broke in.
Because they would have rather died than gone into slavery. With the Romans. But the Masada was actually one of King Herod's vacation palaces that he would get away to.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was fortified. It was on top of a very steep mountain. And it's about a 30 to 40 minute walk to the top.
Yeah.
Isn't there like bathtubs up there and spas and all that stuff, right? There was like a spa, go into like a sauna and the whole thing, get your nails done. All that was there.
Yeah. And so the Romans eventually they besieged it, and they found basically everyone at the top had perished except for one woman, I believe, either one or two children who had hid and kind of lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
Wild, man.
Yeah.
We did Masada. Did we do Qumran? Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yep.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. It's so many things we did.
Elat.
Yeah.
We went and saw Elat, where David hid away in the caves.
Yes.
And
we did that.
we went, that's all in north, and probably Jericho, drove by Jericho, all of that stuff. Then came down south. Caesarea, of course, the aqueducts on the ocean, and then and the stadium and the hippodrome, where the chariots used to race and fight.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. I think the Apostle Paul came through there as well. And then up to Caesarea Philippi, where the gates of hell were there, and the god Pan, and the big hole in the rock, all the sacrifice that went on there.
Yeah.
And Jesus standing there saying the gates of hell will not prevail against the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Incredible.
go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. No. Oh, all amazing places.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we went down south again to Elat, and did we do that's down by the Red Sea, all of that stuff's there, and that's when we started. I think we went, let's rewind. We met Toby in Jerusalem.
Yeah, in Jerusalem.
You want to tell the story?
Yeah, it's kind of my story, I guess. So, of course, I have to stop at every used bookstore there is. So
Yes.
So we all did our own thing, and I decided to go to this old dusty bookstore in downtown Jerusalem, and the old town there. And so I'm finding these gems, and rather than the books just being on the shelf, they're kind of laid parallel with the shelf, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm like, this is a really good book. So I take it, and this English kid says, oh, pardon me, I set that book there. I'm like, oh, okay. And this happened like 4 or 5 times. And I'm like, dude, these are really good books, man. So we hit it off right away. Like, we had the same taste in books, and we were just talking books. And come to find out, this dude is just backpacking through the Middle East. He's backpacked through Asia all by himself. English kid. Just great guy. And so we invited him to join us. We were going to go to Egypt and everything, and that's where he was.
He had just finished climbing
The Himalayas.
No,
Mount Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro, yes, in Africa.
Yeah.
And he had just finished climbing, and I think he was on his way back to England, right?
Yeah, he was just going to swing back into Egypt, and then he was going to take off from there, right?
So he and
He went to Jordan with him too, didn't he?
yeah, he came to Jordan with us, and then he went to Egypt with us.
That's right.
So, but let's give a description of who this guy is. I mean, because again,
Yeah.
he kind of go ahead.
So he's probably what, like 6'2", solid dude, looks like a rugby player.
Yeah.
And he's got an old beat up rucksack full of books.
Yeah. He's got this crazy blonde hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like really tan because he's been traveling through
everywhere, windswept, just like everything's just beat up on him just because all his travels.
Yeah.
And
And wasn't he a server in England or London? I thought he was a waiter or a server, and he would save up his money, and then he would just go and do these trips. He was just an adventurer.
Yeah, I think he's an underwater welder now.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's been all over since. We still keep in touch a little bit.
So he's like, Jake's like, we're about to go to Jordan and Egypt. You want to go? And he's like, yeah, let's go.
I mean, it was insane because, one, this guy was not a believer.
Right.
He wasn't a
That's
believer.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But super cool guy. And obviously he and Jake hit it off, and then we all hit it off.
Yes.
He hung out with us that night. And then he literally left the bookstore with us and we didn't part ways for 3 weeks. So almost. It was
Right.
insane.
Right.
Like, I mean, he just hung out with us. He went down to, to the south. He went to Masada with us, and then, and then he went to Jordan with us. We crossed over and went into Jordan and had some adventures there.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did the Wadi Rum Desert.
Yeah. Wadi Rum.
And we jumped into a Jeep
Yeah.
Bronco.
Yep.
and went flying through. I mean, Wadi Rum Desert is like red sand. And I mean red sand, like rich red sand. Feels like you're on Mars. And there's just, again, rock mountains like everywhere around us. The sky is super clear, and it's just red sand everywhere. And we jump in this Bronco, and we go bombing through the Wadi Rum Desert.
Yeah, with the Bedouins. It was fun.
If you think about us doing that now, like at our age with kids and wives and all this stuff, we'd be like, dude, slow down. But we were just like, step on it. And he's like hauling like 70 miles an hour, like in this sand.
Yeah.
In a Bronco, who knows how the suspension was?
Sheesh,
who knows how those tires were? And he's just like, just swerving back and forth. We're just having the best time going with him.
Yeah.
And we off-road all the way through. Remember, we park. I was just watching this video, Jay. Just a few months ago. And his name's Mahmoud.
Yes,
This
Mahmoud.
dude, he was 21 years old. This dude's in his white garb, Muslim, Arab like garbs, doing flips off of, he's got the full everything. He's like in full garbs, and he's doing flips off of the sand dunes.
Yeah.
And trying to get us to do them. So then we start doing flips off of them or trying to challenge.
Yeah.
And we were having an absolute blast with this kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
But here's the picture leading up to it, though. So we cross the Jordanian border, right? And we have no clue where we're going or what we're doing. We're just winging it, right?
Yes.
We don't have a ride. We have nothing. We just literally walk over the border, and then we're just trying to figure it out.
Yep.
Right, and then we eventually get a cab, and then we get over to a hostel, and we're trying to figure out what we want to do, where we want to go. We know we want to go to Petra,
Yes.
because that's that is the main site to see when you're in Jordan. But we hear about these Bedouins who take you out on tours of the Wadi Rum, So we're just like, hey, let's do it, let's go for it, and it's not much, and so we're told to show up to this certain site at this certain time. We get over there. It's literally on the side of the road,
right,
in the middle of the desert. There's like nothing there.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting. And then these like two beat up, Toyota trucks that look like they're about 20 years old, come flying through the sand. And they know who we are. They're there to get us. They pick us up, and we all, hop in the back of this beat up Toyota truck. And we're mashing through the desert going like, where are we going right now? And we're like, we could be, there we are. Yeah. We could be going out to the middle of the desert. These guys could kill us and bury us and no one would ever know.
Yes.
Right? And we're just thinking, well, it's an adventure, Hey, I got my little knife that I bought in the old city.
Right.
And so that's our protection. But we get out there, and these Bedouins are incredible.
Incredible.
I mean, they have an amazing campsite for us, that they made, and it looks like something that could have been, existed 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. It's incredible, right? And we're sitting in their tents, and they're cooking us dinner. They're doing the way they do it. They dig in the ground, and they have this big cylinder that they're pulling out, and just layered with just chicken and potatoes and all this amazing food that they made.
Rice and everything. They had built this oven in the ground.
Yeah.
They took the coals of a fire and put it at the bottom of this pit. Then Jay said they bury the cylinder in the ground. They literally put the lid on it and then cover it with sand and let that thing cook for us, and it was already ready to go.
Yeah.
Remember, Toby pulls out his he starts juggling. He lights his batons on fire and starts juggling in front of the Bedouins, and they're just like, "Who are these guys?" Right? And then we get it. They had the lute. Remember the lute guitar? We start jamming. We start hitting the bongos with them, and I mean, it was a fascinating night.
It was.
I remember getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and there is no bathroom. You just go, out wherever. And I remember. It was pitch black out, but the stars. You look up at it felt like the stars were falling on you because they were so close. Yeah. Because I think there was no. There's like no light pollution coming to stop the stars from showing up. I mean, it was like when the psalmist speaks about seeing the stars and just what God has done in His creation. It felt like we were fully experiencing that in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, you could see the mountain ranges for miles in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Just from the starlight and from the moonlight.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Sheesh.
This is a picture of us here. Here we are. Here's the crew. In the Wadi Rum Desert, there's that red sand. And there's me, then Toby, that's Chip, that's Jay, That's Jake, and then there's Christian. Nolan wasn't with us on this trip, and yeah, this was in Jordan, and again, I got so much video. I mean, look at Toby, man. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
Just climbed Kilimanjaro, and he's like just hanging out, going along with the ride with us. It was crazy,
I know.
man.
Dude, that was nuts.
It was great.
Yeah, that night, in the Bedouin's tent, he turns to me in the middle of the night and he goes, "Jacob." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You awake?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Promise me that if you're 30 and you haven't married, that we'll join the French Foreign Legion together."
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm like, "You got it, Toby."
Oh, I love it, man.
Yeah. Sorry though, I did end up getting married at 30, and
That's hilarious.
happened.
And we had a secret mission
Yeah.
to minister Christ to him.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
We were figuring out ways to sneak the gospel into our conversation and slowly introduce the Lord Jesus to him, as we had done for years prior already with everyone we come in contact with. So we figured the Lord had brought this guy to us, and we were going to minister to him, love on him as a brother. We're going to make him feel like a brother, and then we're going to minister the gospel to him. Mm-hmm. And so we went up to Petra. We went to the treasury. We went through the sick. The canal there, we saw the treasury. This is the Indiana Jones shot that everybody sees. Mm-hmm. But then we went further and we got on donkeys and we rode up to the monastery. Mm-hmm. You ride up the side of the mountain into the monastery, and that's where this, I mean, insane, beautiful monastery that's been carved into the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty of Petra, is that it's all sandstone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the Bedouins... the Nabateans, I think, helped build that, but the Bedouins there, basically what they did is they would, the Nabateans figured out that they could carve into the stone very easily with rock and with whatever else, and they could shape caves. I think there's 30,000 caves in Petra.
Yeah.
It's all underground. I think the Nabateans were able to store water there 2,000 years ago, so it became very wealthy. As people would travel through, they could charge them for the water. And anyways, all of it's still there, and we got to go and experience it.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yep.
Then we cross over down into Egypt.
We went down.
We went into Egypt.
Yeah.
You remember right on the Red Sea, we stayed at Dahab.
Yeah. Dahab. Yeah.
Dahab on the water. Remember, we paid like $5 for the hotel that night.
Yeah.
And then every meal that was like amazing food was like $5, $5 for everything. And they're ripping us off, and we're like, thank you, you know. Do you guys remember the night when we're all lounging on pillows and the fire's going and we're sitting at a table? Remember, we had the big talk with there was a talk about Jesus with Toby there that night. Do you remember that?
I remember it clearly.
Yeah.
Where do you guys think his heart was at? Where do you think what do you think was happening? I mean, as he's processing, who are these guys? Do you remember if he had ever met a Christian or he had any background in Christianity?
Yeah. To him, I think coming from England, it was like Christianity is just like a hangover from the Victorian era. So it was just something that was nominal,
right?
In England,
right?
And so it's like he runs into these guys, and they're like, they have a vibrant faith, like they believe this.
Yeah,
it was just, a shocker to him. I remember so many things shocking him that night.
Yeah, and we're Americans, so
right.
a lot of the times they have these presuppositions about Americans,
for sure.
Which he would make fun of us quite often about you Americans and your supersized, beverages and whatever
trucks, sized everything.
That's funny.
Yeah,
and so we crossed down into Dahab, and then we decided we're going to go see the pyramids.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we get a ticket to go on the bus.
Yeah.
And we get on the bus, and there we are traveling in the middle of the night on the bus.
Yeah.
And remember, we get stopped.
Yeah. Yep. No, let's rewind a little bit. Okay. So we're down in Eilat in Israel, and we're at the Egyptian embassy, and we're getting our stamps in our passports to basically give us the right to go into these different regions. Because in Egypt, I believe it's split into two different areas. You have to have two different passport stamps to get into these areas, right? So we were told that we had the proper stamps. And, after we went into Egypt, we got in initially, right? And we were on the, whatever side it was. I believe it was maybe the eastern side of Egypt. And, so we go down to Dahab. We enjoy our time there. And then we're going to go see the pyramids. And we hop onto this bus and, very, very uncomfortable.
Right.
We're shoved in between these very large men who, smell like they haven't had a shower in about 3 weeks. Yeah, and just very hot, stuffy in the bus. We're like, hey, but we're doing it. We're going for it. It's like a 4-hour bus ride, something like that.
Yeah,
Pretty
it was
brutal,
long.
right? But so we are traveling through the Egyptian desert, and it's about 2 a.m. or so.
Yeah.
1 a.m., something like that. And we get stopped at the border crossing. And that's when these, military guys come on, and they're kind of forcefully looking at everyone's passports. And we pull out ours, and, it's intimidating because they seem like they're just like ready to, they want something to go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so they grab everyone's passports. They're looking. And then, he stops. He's looking at ours. And then he flags down his boss, right? And they're speaking in a language that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, you need to come now. And they start pulling us off the bus. We're like, what do we do? What's going on?
Yeah.
And that's when their commander, who spoke English, said, you do not have the right passport stamps, and I cannot let you pass this point. And we are in the middle of the desert at, after 1 a.m.
In Egypt.
In Egypt.
Yeah.
Pitch black outside. Nothing that you
No
can
street
see.
lights.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's saying, we cannot let you pass. And this bus is going one direction.
Yeah.
And we're going, well, okay, what are we supposed to do here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not my problem. Right. And we're just like, you are kidding me.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when,
Yeah, they're like, dumb Americans, get off the bus.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're leaving you in the middle of Egypt. We don't care.
Yeah. And Josh, you were, you got angry.
Was I ticked?
You were ticked.
Oh,
You were
man.
ticked. We're like, Josh, they have guns. They could just shoot us. Stop. And
Read in the riot act. there a
and
little bit.
I mean, we got a little comfortable when we were over there. We
Right.
started to kind of get into the culture a little bit. And
Right.
started
Yeah.
to we knew hey, what's pushing the boundary, what's
Yeah.
not. But I felt like at that point, okay, we're maybe pushing it a little far. Let's
Yeah.
Maybe I had been in the Middle East too long.
yeah,
Yeah.
And they're not going to let us pass regardless. So, the bus takes off, and we cannot believe it. We're like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so the guy's like, oh, well, there's a town about, I don't know, what was it, 10 miles or something?
Yeah.
Back that way. And we're like, 10 miles, can we get a ride? Nope.
Right.
We literally walk in the pitch black dark
Right.
about 10 miles
Right.
back through the desert to this little town.
We're walking in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It's just pitch black out. Again, no lights. It's a 2-lane highway. And we're just trying to figure out how to get to this little town.
Yeah. And we follow the highway, we follow the instructions, and we finally get there. And it's maybe I don't know, an hour or so from sunrise. And we
right.
we check into a little hostel.
5 in the morning.
We're so beat and we're hungry, and we check into this little hostel, and thankfully they have this little breakfast, and,
Yeah.
and we get it, and we're just trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the brothers doesn't want to proceed. He doesn't want to go.
Right.
He was Christian, and
Yeah.
Christian didn't want to go. He's like, you know what, guys, I think
Yeah.
that the Lord has spoken. We're not going. We're like, no, dude, we came down to Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to leave
Let's
without
see
seeing
this
this through.
through.
Right.
And so he's like, I'm good, and he books a bus back. Right?
Yeah.
And so anyhow, we end up hearing by happenstance through some guy at the hostel, hey, the port authority is over there, and they, can get you the proper stamp.
Yes.
You just need to go over there. and
Egyptian
talk to them.
consulate.
Yeah.
You need to go over there. Yeah. And so we end up doing that. And we all go over, and we take our passports, and Josh and I walk in, and we have everyone's passport.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And we start talking to the guy. We tell him the situation.
We go through. It's a guarded gate.
Right.
There's barbed wire, big guarded gates. It's like the palace type area.
Yeah.
In the town. And there's these giant gates that had opened, and we walk down, to get to this building or whatever.
Yeah. And we go in and we explain our situation, right? And there's a guy there, and he speaks English, and he seems nice enough. He seems like he wants to help us, right? So he goes, well, give me your passports. I'm gonna take them back, And so he gets the passports, and we're sitting down like in this, waiting room, right? And it's like a lobby, and then there's an office, and he walks through the door of the office. He opens it. He doesn't close it, and then you hear like this, like he starts to explain it, but it's in Arabic.
Yeah,
right?
Arabic. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, they're just like shouting at each other. And we're looking at each other like, what in the world is going on?
Like we're dead.
Yeah. And like, it's just like, rah, 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 rah. Like, and we cannot for the life of us understand
It's
anything.
like, should we get up and run? Like, what is going on in there?
Like yelling. And this goes on for probably like a few minutes, right? And it seems like it's an eternity. Right. And then the yelling just stops, like out of nowhere. Like, it's just quiet for probably like 20 or 30 seconds of dead silence, and then we just hear this boom, boom on the boom. We're like, what is that? It's like slamming the table.
Yeah.
And it's him stamping our passports. And he brings it back out. Okay, you're good to go. And we're just like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were good.
We believe the angel of the Lord showed up that night and like intervened for us, because these dudes with AK-47s and whatever they were, AR-15s, like, around their necks, we thought for sure we were going to jail, or we had made a terrible decision. And we had given up all of the protection that we had at the border. They basically took everything from us when we crossed over. We had like some knives with us and things like that, because again, we're just traveling out in the middle of nowhere. We didn't know who was going to rob us or like whatever. We're young kids trying to figure. We're probably 23. I'm 23, 24, around there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're trying to navigate the Middle East. I mean, this was crazy. So anyways, we get the stamps, dude, and we go skipping out of there like a bunch of schoolgirls.
Yeah.
And we find our bus, and we get on the bus, and then we make it to Cairo.
Yeah. Cairo.
We make it to Cairo,
where
the Egyptian Museum is and the pyramids are.
Yeah.
I remember when we checked into first off, the taxis. Remember the taxi ride? I mean, it felt like we were in a video game, It was crazy.
Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Yeah. Nobody's following the street lights. I was like, I don't know if I told Jay or Jay, I was like, look at the cars. They're all like bumper to bumper, like parked up against each other, and they're all hitting each other's bumper parked.
Yeah.
They just like back up on each other,
Yeah, we got a picture of somebody's back end over the hood.
I mean, it was
his car.
Yeah, they just like nobody cares. And then we went and checked in, and I remember the guy at the guy was so intrigued with us because there's Americans in Cairo, and he was this bellhop, like young guy. And I remember him. He saw that I had an iPod. He's like, "Oh, I buy," and I'm like, "No, man, it's not for sale." He's like, "This has got all the Coldplay music on there. I can't pick that up. I'm sorry."
I remember.
And no, he's like, "Well, please," and I'm like, "Why don't you just order one on eBay? Get it sent over." He's like, I can't, the mailman will steal it. I'm like, what? So it was like, we started to understand their world, what was going on. And I remember going into the Egyptian Museum, and first thing I noticed is there's all of these amazing artifacts. I mean, we're talking about mummies and gold and all the stuff they found in the pyramids all sitting there. And there's no air conditioning in the whole place.
Yeah.
I mean, and everything was like no holds barred. Like it was just like all just sitting there. And we're just like, this is crazy, man. Like the most, priceless artifacts on the planet sitting right here in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo.
Yeah.
And anyways, maybe it's better now, but it was shock. It was culture shock for us, right?
Yeah.
You guys remember we took the taxi or the ride down to the pyramids. And I remember seeing like a dead donkey like on the side of the road or something.
I remember that very, very clearly. Yeah.
And then, you see a lot of poor people. It was very sad, to see
Orphans.
all the... Yes, kids on the streets. You see, trash everywhere. It was just, we called it Gotham City type. It was really weird to see. We saw the Nile, and we drove over the Nile. But anyways, we got to the pyramids, and I remember we were wheeling and dealing for camels and horses.
Right.
Yep.
And we finally got some camels and horses, and we get on them. We saddle up.
Yeah.
And we ride to the pyramids.
Yeah.
I got the picture, man. You got to see this. This is awesome. There we are. It is pixelated because I basically put a filter on it to try to clean it up. But it's about as good as it gets. I should have just put the other one up. But You can see there is Jake in the back there. There's Jason there to the right, then me down there on the black horse, and then Chip on the camel. And dude, we made it to the pyramids, and look at that trash at our feet. Isn't that great?
Yep.
Dude, that picture looks like if you asked AI to make a picture of us.
Yes.
In the pyramid,
Yes.
'cause our faces are all like distorted.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not animated. I mean, it's not generated, AI generated. That is real. And I got video of it too. Yeah, wasn't it? I mean, it was incredible that we were standing there at the base of these pyramids. I remember seeing somebody tried to sell us some Coke. When we were out there. Remember that?
Yeah.
Not cocaine. Sorry. Actually, Coke bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And wheeling and dealing. Remember when the guy came up and took a picture of us?
Yeah.
He's like, "Let me take a picture of you." We're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, take a picture for us." Then he's like, $5, and we're like,
Yeah.
"What?" I mean, it would just
Yeah.
get
No, he opens the Coke and hands it to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, well, thank you."
Yeah.
I'm like so thirsty.
thought it was
He's like,
part of the trip.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then he's like charging me for it. I'm like, "No, I didn't agree to this."
Yeah, we actually hand our Cokes back. Like, here you go. Yeah.
And
Price gouging us.
Jake, wasn't your plan to try to climb to the top of one of these pyramids?
It was. I wanted to climb the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
And I asked the Bedouins, and they're like, "Oh, no, you cannot do it." And it's like, "But you can come at midnight for $100, and we'll let you climb it."
Wow.
And I really wanted to spend that $100.
Yeah.
But the brothers talked me out of it. They said, "No, they're probably going to slit your throat, bury you in the sand, and take your $100."
Yeah.
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 So yeah, it didn't happen. But that's all right.
But you did climb probably like 10 blocks up or something like that.
Yeah.
I think we took a picture or some video of you climbing up those blocks. They're massive.
Yeah.
The
humongous.
base blocks are like,
Yeah.
what are they, 4 feet, 5 feet high?
Dude, yeah, huge.
Kind of the cornerstones, the foundation of those pyramids are absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we made it around. Right there behind us also is the Sphinx. We made it around the backside to go see the Sphinx and all that. Anyways, man, what a wild time in Egypt, huh?
Yeah.
And we have some. Yeah, it was a fascinating but wild time, and God protected us through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, there were some kind of hairy moments too. I mean, a lot of the times we were Canadian when we were there because
Oh yeah.
They didn't mind Canadians so much, but this actually was at the time where Saddam Hussein was publicly executed.
Wow.
On national television.
Wow.
I remember being in the hostel, in one of the lobby areas of the hostel, and it was on TV, and there was a guy that was out there that was livid, and he was screaming and yelling in Arabic and cursing the United States and all this other stuff. And we're like, "Oh, we're just Canadians, man!" Like, because we didn't want any trouble,
Right?
And it was, we were just trying to lay low, and and we were able to, but mostly the experience was incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one that I would love to do again sometime.
Yes.
If the Lord permits.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll go probably in a little bit different fashion, but
A little bit.
yeah. But it would be super fun. That really launched. I felt like a connection within us. It like knit our souls together, right? And a lot of the brothers' souls were really knit together around that time as well. I just remember hanging out like nonstop with you guys. Like we were just day and night running together.
Yep.
And this started to sharpen us as men. This started to sharpen us in our worldview. This was preparing us for life.
Yeah.
Any unique thing, like what do you, like when you think about that time of the brotherhood, I don't know, I felt like we ran for probably like 10 years together.
Yeah.
Obviously before everybody got married. And we're still running together, at capacity that we can, with wives and kids and all the rest.
Yep.
And jobs and life and everything gets in the way. And, but we keep trying to spend time together. But that was a really unique time and a unique opportunity. Yeah, like anything that sticks out to you that like, what brought that together? Like how did that work, and why did we stay so deeply connected, like with the guys? Like what was the secret sauce or like the secret ingredients like of that time? That I don't know that stuck out to you guys that you saw.
It's really hard to put your finger on. I just feel like it was a supernatural thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like the Lord ordained these friendships and brought them together.
Yeah.
And obviously the what you had alluded to earlier, like we are guys that would have probably never ran in the same circles and done the same thing unless it was for Jesus, and I just think that was, the binding element in everything, and our love for the Lord, and and that was all a God thing. I mean, like everything that He was doing in our hearts, and bringing us together to mold us and to shape us into the men that we would be. I mean, dude, such a foundational time. Like I would not be who I am today if it weren't for those times.
Yeah.
And that's really what helped to mold and shape me as a man, and to help, solidify these ideas and these goals and these things to strive for. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have never gotten there had it not been for those times. Yeah.
Anything, Jake?
Yeah, it's something that can't be forced. I mean, it just kind of happened organically. Like I just feel like the Spirit was at work there. I mean, just to see all these guys, on fire for the Lord, passionate about bringing the gospel to the world, to interact with unbelievers. Like it just was incredible, And I think you touched on it earlier. You said, just put yourself out there and then see what God does, and He shows up. It's amazing. Yeah.
I think what I loved about the guys is that it all felt like we were, I don't know how you guys felt about this, but I felt that on the inside, that we were all somewhat on the same exact level, regardless of where we came from, regardless of who we were. Like we were willing to, whether willing or unwilling to receive correction from one another. It happened.
Right.
Again, or just laughing and goofing off, and everybody was made fun of the same, and everybody was torn down and built up the same, and celebrated that. You know what I mean? Like there was just such a, I don't know what the right word is, but it's like it's not that we were vulnerable is part of it, but there was a strength in the vulnerability where we weren't going to like. We didn't want to hurt anyone. We didn't want to tear anybody down that far. There was more of an understanding amongst all the guys that we are here to grow each other in Christ. And so we will take matters into our own hands and make sure that you mature.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that you're running with us and with the Lord. Like we're not going to let you get away.
Yeah.
You can try to run, but we will find you. And we will, and we will drag you back to the Lord Jesus. We will lay hands on you and pray for you. We will make sure that your theology is right. We will make sure. It's because it's just funny to watch all of us ping pong around, like in all of the different things that we've got ourselves into and all the issues. I'm just so thankful for the brothers who've been there keeping me all these years, praying for me, encouraging me, correcting me. I need it too.
It's a testament to the importance of community, right? I mean, and it's still important.
Yes.
Right? I mean, because, the brothers in those days were so intentional about hey, what is your gifting? What is it that you're called to do and meant to do? And whatever that is, dude, we need to hone in on that. And we need to sharpen that. And we need to, we need to help you excel in that. And that was what was done. Right. And there was encouragement, and there was, it's almost like a healthy challenging of one another to do these things. And we did those things. Like it pushed us to strive, right? And I mean, that's how I think, all of us ended up finding amazing women and getting married and having amazing families, right? It's that foundational stuff, that we set and purposed in ourselves to do. And it doesn't end when you reach that place, right? It needs to continue, right? And the fact that we are still so close, and we still have many of the same conversations and talks, and many of the same, it's time for the next level. It's time for the next thing, to strive for and to achieve for the kingdom, and, for personal holiness, whatever it may be, right? It's really important. You cannot make yourself, as we used to say, a mad scientist, right? You can't put yourself,
Can't isolate.
and isolate yourself and lock yourself
in your garage.
Right. You've got to have community. You've got to have fellowship. You can't forsake the gathering of the brethren. Right? Very important.
Yeah.
No, it's so good, Jay, because we do need community. We need one another. And that doesn't end. Though it looks different, right? It's going to keep looking different. The seasons will continue to change. We have to continue to run together at some capacity.
Yeah.
And because it's powerful, we have history. For such a time as this, what else is it for? What else was all of that for?
Right.
Yeah.
To bind us, to keep us together, and for God to continue to use us for His glory long term.
Yeah.
But I love it, and I love when the brothers get to reconnect and continue to reconnect, and we try to create scenarios and platforms to be able to do that. We're working on more of it. Man retreats, and we did a bunch of those, and a lot of retreats together, a lot of hanging out together. Of course, we had all the time in the world back then. Now it looks a lot different, so we're working to try to make it happen. And any of you brothers listening, continue to reach out to one another, continue to reach out to us. We want the guys to stay connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important, especially with marriage and family and all that stuff now.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because in this day and age, it is not easy. It's not easy to figure out. There's no way we're going to figure it out on our own.
Yeah. We continue to be intentional about carving out space. Like even if we're meeting up at 10 in the evening, to discuss something or get together, or, that buffeting needs to happen, So I'm thankful for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When did you guys, rewinding back, when or how did you come to know the Lord? Like, what was the moment of salvation? Do you remember when the lights turned on for you? Was it a season of time, or was it a single moment when you felt everything turned on? I remember for me, I grew up in a Christian home. You guys know my dad, Pentecostal church. Dad's a worship leader, and it was somewhere around high school. Even though I knew a lot about God, someone prayed for me, and I woke up the next day, and I was never the same. A missionary named Leslie Kegel. I was in a Foursquare church, and he said, "Anybody wants prayer today?
Yeah.
Come up here. I'll pray for you." And I just walked forward, and he prayed for me. And I woke up the next day and started carrying my Bible to high school.
Wow.
I became radical in one moment. And of course, my discovery of grace took a while, but it was the moment I woke up.
Yeah. I guess I'll go ahead and go first, Jake. So I was not raised in a Christian home. I was raised by, for one, my parents were divorced at a fairly early age. I believe I was around 7 when they divorced. But my mother was excommunicated by the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, wow.
Had a very bad taste in her mouth with religion overall. My dad was not religious. In fact, he was an atheist and an intellectual. So I even remember my dad, in my earlier years, explaining evolution to me, explaining,
Wow.
How, the universe would ultimately die up in a heat death with the sun and all this crazy stuff that really just made me feel hopeless and terrible. And I remember crying and weeping over that and him saying, "Oh, no, don't worry. We'll be dead long before that happens." And I'm like, "Oh, that's supposed to make it better?" So I just remember these things that, my dad, sharing them with me vividly, and, not having a Christian upbringing at all. I had a very loving upbringing. My parents loved me very much and did their best to, to give me the best life that they could, despite the divorce and those things. But it really...
Both your parents are fantastic.
Yeah.
Love them both.
And fast forward now, they both love the Lord, and they're both saved.
Yes.
But what happened was incredible, because my dad ended up remarrying, and he married Pam, who was my stepmother, a wonderful woman.
Wonderful.
Loves the Lord. And but they ended up starting to go to church together, because she was raised as a Christian. And my dad started to have all of these strange dreams about the Lord. And I won't get into too many of the specifics, but my dad had some crazy spiritual experiences, and happening to an intellectual, happening to a guy who was very grounded and very thought he had a very good grasp on the world. He got knocked on his rear end, right? And the Lord really woke him up. And my dad ended up coming to faith, which is insane, right? And so with that, my mom was raising my brother and I was a troublemaker. I was 13, 14 years old, and she just couldn't handle me anymore. So, running around the streets of Riverside, I was smoking weed when I was, 13 years old and getting into way too much trouble. And so she sent me off to live with my dad in Big Bear. And my dad was a Christian at this point. So, and I hated every minute of that because I did not want to leave my friends. I didn't want to leave Riverside. And, and I was kind of a mama's boy at the time, even though I was very defiant and gave my mom a lot of grief. Well, so I go to live with my dad, and, one night they're going to church to hear an evangelist, and they're not super pushy about it, but they're like, why don't you come along? We'll take you to dinner after. And so I decided to do it. And, I was very disinterested in, church altogether. I didn't want any part of it. And, so I go, and there's an evangelist speaking, and his name is Mike Warnke, and not a very well-known guy by any means, but I remember vividly hearing that message and listening intently. And then the moment where he said, after what I've said, like, if you feel compelled to give your life to Christ, I want you to stand. And the moment that I heard that, I felt this insatiable, like, just urge to stand, and I didn't want to. It's like, no, I don't want to, but my body, it's like almost like involuntarily stood. And I'm like, what is happening? And I had this feeling like just like pulsating through my body, like, this is not normal. Like, this is incredible. And I felt like, I felt the, all of the feelings that you get, and, he prayed, he came and he prayed over me, and he prayed over people. And at that moment in time, like, it's almost like I didn't know what hit me.
Right.
It was incredible. But my dad and my stepmom were like floored.
Wow.
Right? And, but they were quiet in the car ride home, and they were just like, and I'm just like, I'm starving. Can we get some dinner? We're like, oh yeah, totally. And they hooked me up, and they were just looking at each other and smiling. And I remember, to this day, that is one of the best nights sleep I've ever had.
Wow.
Is
Praise
that
God.
night, right? And I had I had some rough times, following that, and I backslid. I did some things that I regret, and but the Lord, it was a sanctification process.
Yeah.
He stuck with me, and it's still to this day a sanctification process.
Yes.
It's like the Lord's always completing that work that, that He said He would finish in me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a little bit of how I came to the Lord.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. So, incredible testimony, Jason. I grew up in a Christian household. Like I said, I come from Christian pedigree, grandfather was a pastor. My dad's a faithful Christian, and my mom, always prayed for me. I can always hear, praying for me. Try not to get too choked up relating
That's all right, Jake. Yeah.
But, I grew up in a Christian household, was walking with the Lord, loved the church, loved the body. Then in my latter teen years, I started to stray. I didn't have any Christian friends at all in high school, and none. So, I started to, live a life of sin, especially in my 20s. I'd moved to Orange County. I was a small town boy, Here I was in Orange County. I was, fresh off the farm, and it was a little easier on the eyes back then. So, I got into, sin, and became a prodigal. I didn't have any Christian friends in Orange County. The friends I did have, they were steeped in sin, and I had to fall flat on my face, and just come to the end of myself, before I could see just that I was in the pigsty, I was in the slop, and what I had back home, at church and everything was beautiful. I had a mom that was praying for me. I had a brother, my brother Ben. He knew I got mixed up with, some woman I shouldn't have been mixed up with. He smashed 3 of my phones, then socked me in the face, and I'll be honest with you, like I thank him for that, thank him. You know, he preached to me. And sometimes, you know, you got to do that with your knuckles. Sermon's got to come through a fist sometimes, I guess. And I was really, like I said, I came to the end myself, and I surrendered my life to the Lord, and I could really see, like, perfect clarity, you know, hindsight 2020, like what that was pig slop. It was vomit. It was like a dog returning to his vomit, you know?
Wow.
And so I surrendered my life to Christ, and I didn't want to go back, you know? And, been blessed by the body of Christ ever since, you know? So.
Oh, praise God. He's pulled us out. And then
Oh, man. Yeah.
pulled us out. Man, who knows where we'd be?
Yeah.
I mean, another 20 years in the world, who knows what we would have done,
man.
what we would have been up to.
Right.
But for the grace of God, man.
Amen.
Yeah.
But by the grace of God, praise God, where he saved us. He is sanctifying us. He redeemed us, and he's been chipping away
Yeah.
at us for many years, and that's how we've come to this place. I love the process because I almost call it like these stages of waking up to grace, you know? Like I remember I stepped in this Foursquare church, and then I remember the moment I stepped into Harvest, and I think I recommitted my life about 1,000 times, you know, like going forward at altar calls, and then discovering grace, you know, from just trying to keep the law and trying to understand even what I was doing, to all of a sudden, like, grace showed up in my mind. Like that epiphany, that moment where, like, mind blown, like explosion goes off on the inside. Wait, you're saying that Christ's righteousness dwells in me.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that I can do to save myself. He's done it all for me. What do you talk? My works? What do you mean? Like, I thought that, and that great exchange, you know, is called this. That he became sin who knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God. That he took on my sin, and that and I would take on his righteousness.
Yeah.
He would take on my punishment, and I would take on his reward. I mean, this is crazy talk, right?
Yeah.
And then we get to go to heaven. We get to enjoy the blessings and promises of him all through life.
Yeah.
We get to have amazing wives, amazing kids. We get to drink our coffee.
Yeah.
We get to have, you know what I mean? And have some nice weather. And even in the hot days, like, we are filthy rich when it comes to the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
One of the first sermons I ever heard you preach was the bad business deal.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's basically what you described. It's a bad business deal. The Lord gives us all the goods, and he takes all of the bad.
It's the worst deal in all of history, or maybe the greatest deal in all of history.
Right.
Yeah.
God, man, it's so good. I still preach it, Jay. I still preach it sometimes. Psalm 103. If you want to know all the benefits of God, go read Psalm 103.
Man.
He knows our frame, but we are dust. He does not repay us according to our sins. I mean, this God, who is this guy?
Yeah.
There's nobody like him. He saved us, redeemed us. And I love what it's done to both of you guys, these intellectual powerhouses. Two fascinating things that I remember you guys getting after and trying to pursue. Jake, one that, like, hit me so hard was when you said that there were like 400 records of the flood on the earth.
Yeah.
And this was a side project, something that you had, like, thought about, didn't actually get to fully pursue, but, like, would you talk about that for a second?
Oh, yeah. So I was compiling a list of all the different flood legends. I was accessing all the different materials, Xeroxing copies. I was going to collate all this information into a compendium.
So what exactly is it?
Yeah, so basically it's all these different people groups throughout the world having knowledge of the flood.
Noah's flood?
Yeah, Noah's flood, the antediluvian world, the ancient Hawaiians, the Native Americans, the Chinese, like everybody, going back all the way to the ancient Near East. The Gilgamesh epic discusses it. So I was working on this project, and then come to find out somebody had just published the book. So I was like, oh, that's all right.
But I'd never heard anything like this.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
man.
Who's going to gather all of the ancient writings of the flood and compile it into one book as an evidence or proof that all cultures on the earth experience this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a topic that just fascinated me. There was a book published in the 50s by Renwinkle, And it was one of the first books on the flood before Henry Morris wrote his book about the Genesis flood. This was like one of the few that took the Genesis flood seriously. And I just remembered him mentioning this, and I was like, wow, I really want to do a deep dive into this. And so, like I said, I would visit academic libraries, and I would gather all this information, and I really wanted to write this book. And then, somebody beat me to it, an academic, so it was...
Is it a good book?
Oh, it's a great book.
Yeah.
I think Master Books through Ken Ham's ministry publishes it. I forget the exact title. If I thought about it, I'd remember. But yeah, so I was like, I'm happy that I spent the time doing that. It was a fun hobby. So
when do we know when the flood, the timeline of the flood, where it sits? Like when we go back in history.
So it's about 4,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Is what they estimate. Absolutely fascinating.
It's 4,000 BC, or this is 4,000. This
would be 2,000.
2000 BC.
Yep. So the main book on this subject is Henry Morris's book, The Genesis Flood.
Okay.
And he lays it out.
Got it.
And there's been subsequent editions of that book. They've compiled more research on this topic, and it's still hands down the best book.
Is there? I felt like on some of the Joe Rogan's podcasts, is that this has been a big topic that's been coming up, where they're talking about the timeline and where the flood could have taken place, and there's all of this stuff coming out now. It's it's becoming a new topic in the culture once again, because they're unveiling all kinds of things. The dinosaur bones that are being found everywhere, and they're like, how in the world did they get in the side of this, area? How did this stuff get here? And a lot of people are starting to discuss the flood again, and how it's moved stuff around the earth, and how all this happened.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and 50 years ago, there weren't any ministries really doing this. Now there's so many, and there's Christian textbooks being published on this topic. There's so much information out there. It's been such a blessing just to see how it's gone from literally one book being published and promoted by virtually one person, and then all of a sudden, 50 years later, you have cottage industries just revolving around creation science. It's a wonderful thing to witness. I can't wait to see what the Lord does in the next 20 years.
So. Yeah, it's a great conversation starter too. With non-believers. Because, you've got even guys like, who were on the Joe Rogan podcast, Graham Hancock, who does Ancient Apocalypse, right?
Right.
This guy's about the furthest thing from a Christian that you can get. In fact, he seems pretty repelled by Christianity. He doesn't care for it, right? He has some negative things to say about it. But, he acknowledges, a
worldwide flood.
Yeah, of a worldwide flood. Yeah. And that is a great conversation or a great place to start, so yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. He just had, just this last week, he had this guy, Stephen Meyer, on, who's a PhD and a philosopher, scientist, I think a philosopher of science. And, really interesting. He's a creationist. He loves the Lord. He's a Christian.
Yeah.
And they do a full talk. Yeah. And Joe presses him, and the whole thing happens. Wonderful episode to listen to. The next episode after Joe, in the latest episode, viewer discretion advised. He's just talking with a comedian, but Joe Rogan is reading the Bible. He's reading the book of Revelation. He's reading about the mark of the beast with this guy who's an Episcopalian comedian who's kind of rebelled against the institution of the church and all the rest, but he still says he holds to Christ, believes in God, all of these things. Has a rough Christianity, and I don't even know how real it is, but it's interesting to watch Kim have Joe reading the Bible on the podcast. The Word of God is going out to millions of ears.
Yeah, I love it.
It's crazy. And then they go so far. I think they read another text, or he starts quoting more scripture on there. Yeah, and they're discussing the scripture, and I'm just looking at what is going on here? God is working.
I need to watch that episode.
No, it's fun. Yeah, it's fun. Jay, you did You did there was a season where you interviewed Lee Strobel. I was there with you, and you were preparing this documentary. You were putting this thing together, which is interesting because I'll let you talk a little bit about it, but it's kind of coming back full circle, like right now in this day and age. Been hearing this in Gen Z. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. And it was a response to the Zeitgeist documentary. Not one that I was able to finish or complete, unfortunately, but learned quite a bit doing it, and got to interview some awesome guys. Got to interview Lee Strobel. Got to interview Dr. Gary Habermas. That was incredible.
The resurrection of Christ.
Yeah, the resurrection of Christ. But really, it's just the notion that Jesus was not a historical figure, that he didn't exist, which is absurd. It's preposterous.
Did you interview Dinesh as well?
I did. Yeah, in passing, we did.
Wow, that's right.
Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah, I remember that.
Speak with him as well, and that was a fun thing to do. But yeah, no, it was a cool experience getting to do that, and this idea that Jesus isn't a historical figure, or that he's copied from earlier pagan myths. It's kind of a viewpoint that recycles itself, every so often, and it's one that's been thoroughly debunked for probably the better part of 150 years, right? But, it's one that continues to recycle itself because it sounds good, right? I mean, it sounds good. It's, it's an easy way to be dismissive of Christianity and, say, oh, well, it's just a copycat religion. Don't you know that there were dying and rising gods and other mythologies and, this, that, and the other thing. But, people don't take the time. It's really not difficult to take the time to see that these notions that there were dying and rising gods in mythology actually came after Christianity. So while the mythological figure maybe predated Christ, like Horus, for instance, in Egyptian mythology predates Christ, the idea that he was a dying and rising god was added to the narrative after Christ.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it's them copying Christianity, not the other way around. And it's silly and it's easy to refute, but it's easy to repeat those things, especially when you hear them, with spooky music in the background, and somebody says it in a compelling fashion. It's but it's just nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
Any books that you guys like? Maybe we could that you would recommend on apologetics, or maybe different categories, like books you'd recommend on just a good foundation in apologetics first, defending the faith.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Jake is the book man. I'm going to let him go first.
Oh, there's so many. I think
let's do categories like apologetics. Then we could do maybe some on like the existence of God. Then we could do some on like how do we know the Bible's true, or Christianity, kind of wrapped around that. Then maybe another one on cults or religions of the world. So
many good ones. I mean, quick, pop apologetic stuff. I would recommend J.P. Moreland's Evidence That Demands a Verdict.
Yes.
It's really good. Norman Geisler, Frank Turek, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist.
Yes.
Awesome. And there's all kinds of different apologetic methodologies that are out there, and maybe not everybody sees eye to eye on everything, and we won't get into that too much. I mean, there's the evidentialists and the classicalists and the presuppositionalists, and I fall more into the presuppositional camp, even though I used to be more of an evidentialist.
Yes.
But we can use evidence to certainly defend the faith.
Tools.
And they're tools. And Norman Geisler's works are awesome when it in that vein. Very, very good. And and then on the presuppositional side, getting into the weightier, heavier things. I would recommend anything by Van Til, and I would recommend Dr. Greg Bahnsen, Pushing the Antithesis. Anything by Bahnsen is going to be gold.
Yeah.
It's great stuff, and an amazing defender of the faith. If you can go and listen to Greg Bahnsen's debate with an atheist, trying to remember the guy's name, but it's legendary, and hearing the way that he's able to interact. And to give a defense of the faith, it's incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Habermas, evidence for the resurrection.
Yes.
Geisler, in the evidentialist camp, Jason already said. Bonson, of course, I highly recommend that. Understanding the culture, Herbert Schlossberg, Idols for Destruction, absolute must read. Absolutely got to read that. Understanding the Times by Noble, that's really good. And that's a comprehensive view of all the different worldview categories and how to interact with them. There's so many different camps, but I think they're all helpful. I once talked to Dr. Robert Morey, and he considered himself a Schaefferian. And so he was at the very top of that pyramid. In his pyramid, this is how he likened it, is presuppositional, and then the base of the pyramid is evidence, so you can use both. And so I like to read evidentialist guys, precept guys.
Would you guys break that down just for a second, Jay? Somebody break that down.
Jason would probably do a better job.
Sure. So presuppositionalism is basically starting with God and the Bible as the ultimate authority.
Right.
And you work from that rather than trying to take evidence to work your way to that.
Right.
Right. So the evidentialist will start with like a clean slate, tabula rasa, right? There's, we're all both on common ground and we're both using, reason and logic and evidence to try and support our position. And so we're working our way based on the evidence to the Bible. Whereas presuppositionalism is going to start with the Bible is the ultimate authority, right? And we work from the Bible. And then, of course, we use evidence to substantiate that. But the ultimate authority is not man's reason or man's, methods of, determining truth, but it's the Bible that is the ultimate authority. And that is the source of truth. Right. So that's just a, kind of a basic explanation, but, that can, you can go down that rabbit hole and research quite a bit about that. Francis Schaeffer, when Jake had referenced Dr. Morey being Schaefferian, Francis Schaeffer is an incredible resource. Anything that you can get your hands on by him. Yeah. How Shall We Then Live is an excellent book that will deal with, a lot of those different concepts, and it's very actually easy to read. It's a great communicator.
Yeah, and all these guys kind of travel together, intellectually. So you have Schaeffer being heavily influenced by a guy named R.J. Rushdoony, who was he popularized presuppositionalism. He wrote the first, I want to say, primer. It was by what standard? So it was popularization of Van Til, which is the godfather of presuppositional apologetics. And then Rushdoony was a theonomist, and Bonson was one of his students. So you have Schaeffer, you have Bonson, you have Rushdoony, you have all these guys, and you have Rushdoony even helping to get the Genesis flood by Henry Morris, published. So you want to read all these guys, whether or not you're exclusive, a card-carrying member of either camp. It's just helpful,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One book that never left my side when I was younger and I was, studying all of the different world religions and cults was The Kingdom of the Cults by Dr. Walter Martin.
Yeah.
No relation. I wish there was, but no. Dr. Walter Martin's work
so good.
is incredible, comprehensive, amazing. So I used that resource, and I marked that book up, and to this day, it is still one of the best resources that you can get on those topics.
Yeah, and Dr. Bob was a student of Walter Martin.
Robert Morey.
Yes.
So he had that baptism of boldness, that's for sure.
Yeah, Robert Morey, who we somehow talked Mike Jonker into letting speak at the
Thank you, Mike.
at the well camp.
Thank you, Mike. Sorry for the. If you were at the camp, you know what happened.
Yeah. But first message was insanely good.
Fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second one was, whoa.
Yeah.
He was ahead of his time.
Yes, he was. We'll just keep it at that.
Yeah. What about debates? Great debates that you guys that are online that you watched that you really enjoyed that you'd recommend to those listening. Go and watch these. They're just incredible.
Oh man,
There's so many.
Right.
It's so many.
Yeah.
It's hard to think. Yeah.
Apologia Church, they recently acquired all the audio of Bonson's debates, his lectures, and it's free. So
Wow. You can find it on their website?
yeah, you can find it on their website. I don't recall exactly, but Apologia will have a link to that content. And then the debate Jason's referring to, I don't remember the name of his opponent in that, but if you just look up great debate, Bonson versus fill in the blank, I don't recall. And then, man, there's so many going back. Belloc and Chesterton against H.G. Wells. Great stuff there, Is Christianity good for the world? That's an ongoing debate, that people have had up until recent times. So, it's incredible stuff.
On the cults, Dr. Walter Martin debating Van Hale on Mormonism is one of the best debates I've ever heard. It's incredible. And I would highly recommend that one. Is Christianity good for the world? There is a whole documentary debate between the late atheist Christopher Hitchens and Doug Wilson.
Yes.
And it's called Collision.
Yeah,
Is
it's a great
Christianity
one.
good for the world? And I would highly recommend that. Incredible. Watch that multiple times. You'll get a lot from that.
About Richard Dawkins and that mathematician.
Yeah. Gosh, his name escapes me at the moment. But yes, it's very, the Oxford mathematicician.
Yes.
Trying to remember his name.
Jolly old man.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's incredible, and I know his name, and now it's just on the tip of my tongue. Can't recall, can't remember at the moment, but
Great debate. Yes. These were fun to watch. I felt like we were scouring the internet trying to find debates, and we were showing up at them anytime we could.
Yeah.
In town because we just love to watch the battle of the minds.
yeah. Anything more modern today. Well, it even goes way back, but Dr. James White has a ton of incredible debates.
Totally.
And James White has debated, Muslims in mosques over, overseas. I mean, incredible things that he's done. He's debated atheists. He's debated cultists, all kinds of different. He's debated Roman Catholics. So there is a slew of good information. And now Dr. James White is connected with Pastor Jeff Durbin over there at Apologia, and they're a powerhouse duo.
Yeah.
They do debates together now. Anything that you can watch from them is going to be very helpful. They're both extremely gifted and talented.
They're on the streets a lot too.
They are. They're out there street witnessing. You can watch reels. You can watch shorts of Jeff Durbin talking to people in front of abortion clinics.
Durbin's content is incredible.
Yeah, to people on college campuses, all kinds of different things. So, and one other name to drop, just because he's got some incredible stuff, is R.C. Sproul. So, R.C. Sproul is a real gift to the church. So I'd highly recommend.
Yeah.
We discuss this a lot. We discuss this a lot behind the scenes. We're having talks about this stuff all the time. Jay, you're a business owner. You run the churro bar, but you've run a couple businesses already.
Right.
And you're growing your business. Jake, you're an educator. And but I think you're a publisher as well, or you're an author. You have 10 books already sitting in there. We just need to get them on paper. And so I can say author because it's already there. We just got to make it happen. And maybe a podcaster as well. A dynamic duo sitting right in front of me. Could probably take the world by storm if you wanted to. I said it first here on the Stokehouse podcast.
Thanks, brother.
And I could see you guys sitting right in front of James White and Jeff Durbin easily in 6 months because of what God's gifted you in. But we talk about this a lot behind the scenes. How is God to use your business? How is God to use our giftings, the education system? How is God to use the tools that we have within us and in our city to start to transform the culture around us? What does it look like? What are the steps to transform the culture around us? Obviously, for the sake of our kids, we want the next generation to worship God and know Him, but we are hoping and praying and believing that God will do a great work once again in the church, and that revival would break out at some capacity. Obviously, we can see America turning away from God, and we've seen Southern California do this, of course, here in LA. I mean, crazy. And more than ever, we need to start to shift the tide back in the other direction. And we talk about ways and how to do this. And so I'd love to hear kind of from your guys' angles, as Jake is an educator and Jay as a business owner, like what does that look like in real time? What are we supposed to do?
You want to start with that one, Jake?
Yeah, I actually recently listened to a great podcast by Joel Webb and Eric Kahn. They were Eric Kahn leads the Hard Men podcast, so I highly commend that. But
Hard Men?
Yeah, the Hard Men podcast,
Okay.
because God does not want us to be soft men. No Malakoi.
Hey.
So so he started the Hard Men podcast. Great content. Group of 5 guys went up to Ogden, Utah, and they started a publishing house. They started several podcasts. They started St. Brendan's Classical Christian Academy, and of course a church. And they're Christian businessmen, and they want to plant in their community. And I really think that's kind of key. And they were kind of critiquing the church planting churches model and saying, I think it's best if we take just some mighty men, like a core group of guys, and we commit ourselves to an area. We plant our sword, and we said, okay, this is our ground. This is where we're going to spend the next 30, 40, 50 years if God allows. And we want to leave a Christian legacy behind, a footprint here in this city. And we want to use our time, talent, and treasures towards the advancement of His kingdom in fill-in-the-blank city. And so you be salt and light. So you got to be salty. We need to be salty, and you got to, of course, always be shining bright, animated by joy and cheerfulness and hospitality. And, of course, the Word being at the center of everything. Letting it, as Doug Wilson likes to say, come out of your fingertips. Everything you do, let it be informed by the gospel. Let it be informed by the Word. The whole counsel of God. And you got to be intentional about what you're doing. So, solid church, and then of course a solid school. You gotta be intentional about who your heroes are and who your kids' heroes are, and they got to know the Christian story and about their forefathers that have come before them. That's one aspect of honoring your father and mother, that you would live long in the land that your God gives you. You don't want to denigrate your predecessors. You want to celebrate what's good, eat the straw, spit the sticks, and just plant and grow. And that's something they're not going to get in a public school. So you want Christ to be preeminent in all things. So that means in every field of human endeavor, whether it's politics, whether it's theology, whether it's history, English, you name it. So you want them to be, you want to give them a distinctively Christian worldview. So I can't commend the work of these men more highly. Doug Wilson's written a ton on this stuff. Again, Webben and Eric Kahn, great content there. There's authors that have wrestled with this for a very long time. Alan C. Carlson's a great academic if you really want to dig deep into community and what that means, over the long haul. But as Jason continues, maybe I'll chime in.
Yeah, and just kind of excuse me, piggybacking on what Jake had said about them not getting that in a public school. It's not only that they're not getting that, it's they're hostile in the other direction.
Right.
Right. They are intentionally trying to shipwreck the faith of kids.
Right.
And they are trying to mold and shape them into a worldview that is completely antithetical to Christianity in nearly every way. Right. So, Vodi Bakum always used to say, if you put your kids with Romans, 6 hours a day, don't be surprised when they come home as Romans.
Right.
Right. So you put your kids in a public institution and you allow their minds to be molded and shaped, by people who hate God all day long, you're going to, be putting your kids at a severe handicap right out the gate. But, to getting back to your original question, Josh, about, influencing the culture, it starts with the family, right? It starts in the home, right? And education is a huge part of that, right? So where you are educating your children, where you're sending them to be educated is, it's monumental. And whether that's, at a highly vetted private school, right? One that you know well and that you are familiar with the curriculum, what's being taught. You're not just sending your kid off, hey, get out of my hair for 6 hours so I can get my stuff done. And, you learn some stuff. I mean, I felt like, that's kind of what things, how things were done in our childhood, a lot of like kind of parenting on accident, just like, hey, and that's no knock to our parents' generation, but that's just the way that things were done.
Right.
Versus now it's like we need to be very intentional about what our kids are learning. It needs to be very well thought out.
Right.
Whether that's in the private school or with a homeschool program, which is what we do. We use a few different curriculums, but we're part of a co-op called Classical Conversations, and that's the curriculum that we use. And then there's other supplemental curriculums, but so we start there with the family and with our children's education and molding and shaping them into the kind of people that can be movers and shakers, and world beaters, and that can make a difference in the culture. That's the start of it.
Right.
Right. And, so it's in all of these different spheres that we are governing ourselves. We're governing ourselves in the home, and then it's in the church, right, where things need to be very intentional in the church. What are we learning? What's our worldview? What's our vision? And bringing that into the public sphere. Right. And, wanting to influence in your local city. I mean, I think, a great way to do that is to start businesses, right? Be somebody in the community who is influential, right? Somebody who has power and authority in that way. So I think that these are all great steps that can be taken.
Would you elaborate a bit more on that business? Would you encourage Christians to be business owners?
Absolutely. I think that's a very important thing. If not everybody can do it immediately.
Sure.
Right. But the more self-sufficient you can be, the better.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you're not dependent upon an employer for a paycheck, that is so much more freedom and so much more power and ability to do the things that you feel called and compelled to do.
Yeah.
If you are working for a corporation that wants to keep a high ESG score and, doesn't like your worldview or your opinions, you need to be very cautious about what you say and who you say it to. Right. I mean, they're monitoring your social media. They're monitoring your interactions with employees. If you say one wrong thing, right, you're going to have a world of hurt. Right. Right. And there are people that are actively committed to destroying you. Yeah. If you even so much as go down that road. Right. And it's a good way for them to keep people in check. So if you are self-sufficient and you have your own business, you have your own way of producing income, you're a lot more free to say the things that you want to say and to do the things that you want to do for the kingdom, right? So I would highly encourage it, and it's possible, it's doable. There are so many different ways to start businesses and to do the things that you're passionate about. But it takes grit, it takes research, and it takes some risk.
Yeah.
You got to get out there and not be risk averse.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of the things about, being a hard man is almost like taking those risks, right? You want to be one that is not afraid of the challenge, right? And it doesn't mean you want to be a fool, but you want to be someone who is willing to do those things, willing to go out on a ledge and give something a try.
Right. Right. And in business owning, living out the Word of God amongst your employees, setting principles amongst your staff that might cause them to live out the Word of God. It's really, we talked about this last podcast, as you guys, Chick-fil-A has been able to, regardless of where you stand with Chick-fil-A, my pleasure, at the end of a meal. It's amazing how this impacts you. You're just like, can't wait for my chicken sandwich. You're like, thanks so much, my pleasure. What? Thank you. That was very kind, And it's amazing how these subtle things closed on Sunday, like we're setting a precedent. We're going to go and worship, but that a business owner actually has the power to influence quite a bit of people. All these customers who come through,
Absolutely,
all these employees that come through. I mean, and if we had not hundreds but thousands of Christians owning the businesses on a block, or in a town, we could literally push forth the Word of God and principle, living that out and letting the gospel permeate through our lives to everyone around us.
Yeah. You think of In-N-Out, just being an iconic Southern California thing, and then going nationwide. I was talking to an In-N-Out employee, and he was telling me, he's like, "Yep, they told me in the training that you have to, when somebody goes to the drive-through, they have to be greeted at least 3 times.
Wow.
So they have to be greeted by a smile, and they have to say, "Hey, how you doing? Have a great day." So that's impactful.
Wow.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that all these ideas about good business practices and good business ethics all presuppose a Christian worldview.
Right.
Right. You don't have coherence unless you have that.
Right.
In a Christian worldview. Why are we to be friendly and kind to people?
Right.
Why are we to do right by people?
good.
Why are we to treat people, with dignity and respect?
Yeah.
And, why are we to do a good job? All of these things presuppose a Christian worldview. Yeah. So.
Any thoughts, Jake, on the education system? How do we rebuild? Where do we start?
Yeah, man,
I know it's a big question.
yeah.
I'd just love to hear anything.
Absolutely. I think it needs to be priority number one. On the flight back from Alaska, I just got off the plane a couple days ago.
Deep sea fishing. Deadliest catch.
Yeah.
You're a dangerous man, Jake.
Thanks.
You've gone to work for your family.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacoby Nelson.
Yay.
Plug to you.
Shout out.
He got it. Got me to, and Ole Haynes.
Nice.
And my captain. I was on my flight back, and I sat next to 2 people. One guy was out of Seattle, and he's got his kids in public school, and we started talking, and I told him, I'd rather literally lose a limb than to send my kid to a public school.
Wow.
And the gal next to me, she was saying her sister, who's a single mom in Central Valley, California, they wanted her little boy to put a dress on to celebrate, what's going on, like with the Trans Day and stuff. And so, that came to a head, and she had to pull her kids out and everything. And so I cannot emphasize this enough. Like, it needs to be a top priority for individuals. It needs to be for not only parents, because you can't adequately love your neighbor unless you're concerned about children in general.
Right.
Your neighbor's children. And it needs to be a priority for individuals, for parents, for churches. We have this is the ministry. These educators are in the Christian schools. They're preaching sermons to them, 5 days a week, and you don't want to let the godless state be doing that to our kids. Mm-hmm. So whether that looks like homeschool or private school, obviously I really believe in like a solid Christian private school with the classical model, because I really want my kids to know what Christian culture looks like, and I want to see Christ's flag raised over every subject. I want them to have an integrated Christian worldview. I want them to think coherently about everything, because in Christ all things cohere, all the sciences. So back to your question about what can we do, thoughts on education. We need to really redouble our efforts in that department, and have it be something that we're passionate about. It's a sad thing, I'll be honest with you. It's a sad thing when you go to a homeschool conference and you see women there, moms there. That's beautiful,
Yes.
But 200 years ago, when you thought education, that was primarily a male endeavor. Teachers were.
What you're saying is the dads don't really care. They're not involved. They're kind of hands off.
Yeah, well, there's different reasons for that. So you can have the guy who's a general contractor is working out of town. He's slammed. He's tired. But if you're going to use what you should really, it's like if you have free time, try to make it overlap with the homeschool convention. Your kids' souls should be priority number one. The Bible says to have the hearts of the fathers turn back to the home. And that's what we need. I think once we see men really prioritize that and not look at it as a feat or a female endeavor, we'll regain ground in this culture. We'll see men on their faces pleading to God. We'll see men being creative, using their time, talent, treasure in this department, and I really think we'll gain ground that way. Like once you hear that tone, all the people talking in those conferences, it's mostly women. Once you hear a bunch of baritone voices, we'll be in the right direction.
Interesting, because it shows the men are not being passive.
Yeah,
they are involved. And it doesn't mean that their wife or the moms aren't leading in the home, trying to help educate the kids, obviously at a high level.
Yeah.
Obviously they are, because many of the men have to go on their way and get off to work to make money for the family or whatever the situation might be.
Yeah.
But
it's not a knock on the moms.
That's right.
God bless them. I love what they've been doing.
Yes.
They're the Tiger Moms. They've been at the city halls.
Yes.
They've been championing the rights of their kids and the family. But we really need to see the
actually happened here in L.A.
Yeah.
The women were shouting down the school district here.
Yeah.
Man.
But it needs to be the men. It needs to be led by men.
I hear you.
And, when one man stands up, it emboldens other men. It really does. It's contagious, So that we need more of that, Pray for that baptism to fall on us, the spirit of boldness, Did you have any thoughts, Jason?
Yeah, I think that I agree with everything Jake's saying, and I think that maybe to add one place where that can start, to maybe spread that fire is the pulpits. The pastors exhorting their men to do these things, and not in a passive way, but in a very direct way, right? To where the men need to start getting involved. The men need to start being passionate about these things. It's not just like, oh, that's what my wife handles. That she takes care of that kind of. It's something that they need to be actively involved in,
right,
and interested and passionate about, right? And churches need to, find ways to do that. They need to find ways to appeal to the men. Church has become rather feminized in a lot of ways.
Right.
It really has, and it's usually, in a lot of times in our culture, it's the women who are driving the families to church,
right,
trying to get them to the church.
Right.
The men go along with it, and that's fine and all, but we want to see it being led by the men.
Yes.
Because there's just something about that
right,
that is impactful.
Yeah.
And changes the culture.
Yeah. Well, they're called to lead. They're made to lead.
Yeah.
It's, and I think women want men to lead. They genuinely do. They are doing it because no one else will.
Yeah.
And but they would love for a good godly man to step up to the plate and get after it.
It's just another instance of the old saying that good times create weak men. right? And then weak men create hard times. And then hard times create hard men, who in turn, the hard men create the good times. And it's cyclical, right? But we need those hard men to emerge. You know.
We'll wind this baby down, huh? What do you say? We'll go get some lunch.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your guys' definition of a good, godly man. What does he look like? Who is he supposed to be in this society? Love to hear your definition.
AJ Hurley.
Who give a plug is going to be out here in California the 29th, I believe.
Yep.
To try and help stop a third trimester abortion clinic they're trying to put up in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And so we want to promote that for him. He's trying to rally leaders in town and church members to come out and support. It's not built yet, but they're trying to get it going, and so he's going to be out here doing that.
Yeah. So our mutual friend Tim, Pro-Life Wolverine, he's on Instagram. He's going to be heading that out here alongside AJ, along with Pro-Life Spider-Man. He's also got an Instagram handle, Pro-Life Spider-Man. Mason Duchamps. They're going to be working on that aggressively, trying to prevent that from happening. So I want to kind of circle back to your question and what they're saying. So their work, they've been in the front lines of fighting abortion and fetal organ harvesting at the Zuckerberg Center in San Francisco. Horrific stuff. The stuff nightmares are made out of when you hear about what they do in these clinics, inducing abortion and harvesting the organs, oftentimes while the baby's still alive. So, but I say AJ Hurley because he's got that wild man spirit. And I think this hour in our culture requires the wild man, the John the Baptist types, you know? So there was a guy named Doug Giles. I was reading his book while in Alaska. He recently wrote one on John the Baptist, you know, and that I think he's got his finger on what needs to happen. We need boldness. We need people that are radical, that actually take the fight to the enemy. It was Saint Boniface, I believe, who cut down the sacred oak of the Germans, where they used to practice human sacrifice, and then he used some of the wood for kindling, and then he used the rest of the wood to build a chapel. And the German barbarians practiced human sacrifice, ritual torture, you name it, every godless thing under the sun. Were horrified, you know. So it was Boniface who said that you run towards the roar of battle. You know, and too often times we don't. We retreat from the roar of battle. Instead, bring the fight to the enemy. You know, God's on your side. Who's going to be against you? You know, and I've literally seen it happen. And when you bring the fight to the enemy, you know, the Lord shows up, and it's you see spiritual warfare right in front of your face. You know, right before your eyes. And so I kind of said AJ Hurley tongue in cheek, but I really mean that. You know, amazing brother. You know. Best friend, like we need more men like that, like to stand in the gap, who recognize a gap and they fill that void. They're like, I'm going to champion the rights of the voiceless, the fatherless, just like the scriptures instruct me to do, and it's going to be unpopular. I'm not going to look cool doing it. I'm going to look like a voice crying out in the wilderness, and that's exactly what we need. So,
yeah, I mean, love your wife, love your children.
Yes.
You know, sell yourself out for them.
yeah.
You know, and get involved in the church. I mean, I'm gonna leave it with Jake's answer.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He gave a really good answer.
Yeah. No, we need, you know, men are obviously in different seasons of life, in different places of life. You think of the young guy, the 20-year-old, you think of the 80-year-old man. You think of the guy with no kids, You think of the guy who's single,
Yeah.
who's just learning life. You think of the man who's lived life and has grandkids. You think of, those in our stage of life who have kids and families and responsibilities. And that's what I'm speaking to, is trying to process all of these men who are thinking through their situation and saying, how am I to live out godliness in real time for my wife, for my kids, for my home, for my town? What does that look like in real time? And obviously, as you know, people are called to so many different lanes.
No, you're right.
And some are going to be able to do, I don't know, get on the front lines and get after it in certain seasons, and some are not going to get on the front lines. Some will get on the front lines for one day. Some will stay on the front lines for 3 years. But what I think I love about what Jake is saying is he is saying that men need to be pushing forward and meeting the enemy on the front line instead of sitting back and waiting for the fight to come to their doorstep.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Word of God, when it comes to standing for righteousness, when it comes to living a godly life, obviously loving their wife and their kids and all of those things.
Absolutely. I'm glad you unpacked that, because I don't want to say one size fits all for everybody. But I'm saying it. I pray for a burden on the hearts of men. I mean, when you see them, cutting off the genitalia of healthy boys and girls, and you're not moved by that,
right?
If you're not stirred, if there's not a fire in your belly,
which they're proposing, and it's happening in our culture right now. They have convinced the parents to allow this to happen to children.
And the force of law behind it, And if that...
It has happened.
Yeah. And if that doesn't stir you, then you need to do a deep spiritual evaluation with an open Bible in front of you. So that means your priorities have to shift. That doesn't mean that you have to become a burnout, a Christian burnout, and allocate all your time towards fighting the enemy. That's not what that means. But you might have to adjust, reprioritize, and like you said, Josh, everybody's going to have a different season of life that they're in. Like right now, I'm a father of 5. I work really long hours, and I can't do activism the way I used to.
How old's your oldest, Jake?
He's 6.
And your youngest?
He's just a few months old.
Let's go!
So they're little wild men, no joke.
Yeah.
All boys.
All boys. Yep.
Crazy.
So
you were in the season.
Yeah, I'm in that season, and so I have a family, so I can't, like I said, I can't allocate as much time as I would have, before I had kids. But there's other men in different seasons of life. Some men are retired. Maybe at this time, at this season, maybe it's not the time to buy a giant RV or whatever. Maybe you can allocate some time at the clinic or the abortion mill, as I like to call it, and spend your twilight days defending children, defenseless children. I really think that you'll be rewarded in heaven with beautiful angels around you and praising you for your efforts on this side of eternity. And if you can't be there physically, open up your pocketbook, and there's plenty of ministries that are there that are providing clothes and providing shelter for women that need it because they're in dire straits to where they need that assistance. That's one way, but just getting your head in the game, realizing that there's
a good way to say it.
A war going on, and what little thing that can I do, and don't think that thing is too little for you to just let slide. Actually do it. Yeah.
And because everyone sat back and not kept their head in the game, this is why all this has come upon us.
Yeah.
Everybody's just been sitting back on their hands.
Yeah. We need to be stirred. Yep.
Yes. How about we end on a high note here?
Yeah,
we will. America and our culture seems to be turning in the wrong direction, but God. But God can and will show up, and obviously He's stirring us already, and seems to be stirring a lot of people, like AJ, or stirring a lot of men in the church, a lot of pastors, a lot of professors, a lot of writers, a lot of fathers, and a lot of, let's be honest, a lot of women as well are extremely passionate and fired up and getting on the front lines and starting to fight. And what are we hoping that God will do? What is the silver lining? What are we hoping and believing that will take place and happen?
I think there's great hope.
Bring it, Jay.
Honestly, I think there's great hope. You know, the days may get darker before they get brighter, but, you know, we believe the battle's already been won, right? The Lord is victorious.
Yes.
He's declared it in his word, right? We read it. These promises aren't in vain, right? Where he says that his children will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand of the sea, right? We win. Okay. We do win down here.
Yes.
And I think the Lord will, will do that. Now, the mechanism or the way that is done, or how that plays out, it could be a long while, it could be a short while. I do remember an answer that Doug Wilson had given in response to a question that I had actually asked him at a conference, and he was talking about our culture, likening it to being like a very sick person who's come down with a severe fever, right? And that fever has bogged them down and made them bedridden. But that fever will break. It will break eventually, right? And we are nearing the fever breaking. You can feel it in the culture. You can see it. You could see the pushback with a lot of these crazy ideas. It almost seems as if, if you want to call them the radical left, if you want to, just call them the enemy or whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
They've almost overplayed their hand. They've gone too far in certain ways, and now people who may not even share a Christian worldview. Right. Of course, they have the foundations of a Christian worldview. Right. They don't even understand that they do. Yeah. Right.
They're stealing from Christianity.
Right. But they're starting to wake up and to recognize something's rotten in the state of Denmark, as Jordan Peterson always says. Right. So there's something not right here. And people are starting to push back. But as people push back, the left gets more radical and more brazen in their attempt to push their worldview, right? It almost seems it's like they're not even hiding it anymore. And one other point that Doug Wilson made in that answer was, the bad news is we're fighting a ferocious, fire-breathing dragon. The good news is the dragon is suicidal, right? The dragon is suicidal. It's not sustainable. Right? So, and coupled with the truth of the gospel and the fact that we know what happens, we know who wins. Right? I think that there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that it's the little things. We just got to start doing the little things, right? We got to be active in the church. We got to be active in the culture. And we've got to do the day-to-day, right? The mundane stuff. I got to love my wife. I got to raise my kids. I got to train them in the ways of the Lord, raise them up. I got to run my business with integrity. I got to grow my business. And then I got to take all my money and I got to give it to causes that further the Christian worldview, right? Don't take my money and give it to people who are making art that spits in the face of God. Right. And hey, let's give it to people who are going to produce art that promotes the Word of God and promotes godliness or promotes Christian ideas. Right. I mean, there's just so many things that we can do. But I think that the tide is turning. I really do. Now, how long is that going to take? We don't know. Right. But we just keep our head down to the plow, and we do what we're called to do.
Yes. Well, yes, we must hope. We must look to God. We must trust in Him. And for the sake of our kids and the next generation, I am believing that it is a part of God's plan that a lot of the darkness has been exposed, that it has awakened the sleeping giant, that there are thousands of parents who are ticked and ready to raise godly families. We will stay married. by the grace of God. We will raise godly families. We will disciple our kids. We will train them in the ways of the Lord. They will defend the faith. They will build business. They will take the culture by storm. We will see revival within our kids, our children, and our children's children by the grace of God. For such a time as this, why in the world are we on a podcast all fired up about this right now, talking about this, planting seeds, a podcast that our children will listen to in the future?
Yes.
They will hear the testimonies of what we're speaking about, and we're hoping will beam into their lives, and they will get married, and then those seeds will trickle down into their children, and God will water all of this. God will bring forth the increase like only He can, and He can snap His fingers at any time. Anytime He wants to, He turns Nineveh over.
Yeah.
Anytime He wants to, He just says, all right, I'm tired of you guys playing that little game of trying to hurt my people and, trying to crush my will and my work. I'm just going to drop the bomb on really the spiritual bomb, the spiritual righteousness on a nation. And all of a sudden everybody wakes up, and it's amazing when He does it. And you alluded to it earlier, Jake, we need to pray. We need to repent. We need to seek God. We need to return to His word. And Jay, we need to plant in our children these seeds, believing that God is going to bring forth the increase. I can't believe anything else. I will not believe anything else. Why would I?
Yeah.
Because I cannot send my kids into fire to burn up. I'm going to send them into fire to put it out.
Right.
And to fight the dragon and to slay this dragon.
We're playing this game to win. We're not playing to lose.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Why else are we plowing the ground every day? What in the world is it for? And so that's why I love you guys. You guys are always planning and scheming on how God will bring forth the increase and restore our families and our nation. And I love these conversations.
Yep.
Yeah. I love them too, and I hope to have another one again.
Yes, sir.
I love him, and I love you, brother. Thank you.
Love you, Jay. Love you, Jake. You guys are some of my favorite brothers to be with. Thank you for being so kind to me, spending time here, and thank you for pushing me on all these years and for pushing the other brothers on. Please continue to do so. Don't ever hesitate to pull out the sword, the word of God, and sharpen and correct and to build up and encourage as we've done so for so many years. And I pray and hope we've got another 20, 30, 40 years on the horizon to run together. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Let's go get some good food, huh?
Let's do it.
Love you guys.
Love you too, bud.
Bro.